They called it a mercy when Alpha Cade rejected her in front of the entire pack. Standing beneath the iron moon, Aria Thorn felt the bond snap like a bone breaking inside her chest, heard the laughter echo off the stone walls of the gathering hall. She was 23, born under bad stars according to pack law, and now she was nothing, worthless, a stain on the Ironwood legacy. But here's what they didn't know. The girl they threw away was carrying something in her blood that would burn their world to ash. If you want to see how a rejected outcast becomes the one thing they all fear, stay until the end. Drop a comment with your city so I know who's watching, and hit that like button. You're going to need it for what comes next. The night Aria Thorn's life ended, the sky was the color of a fresh bruise. She stood in the center of the gathering hall, a cavernous space carved from mountain stone, its walls slick with moisture and history. Torches burned in iron sconces, throwing shadows that danced like specters. 300 wolves surrounded her in a circle, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. This was supposed to be her triumph, her claiming. The moment she'd been raised for since childhood. Instead, it became her execution. Alpha Cade Blackwater stood 10 feet away, arms crossed over his chest. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes like frozen rivers. The kind of man poets wrote about and mothers warned their daughters over. His presence commanded gravity. When he entered a room, the air itself seemed to bow. Aria had loved him since she was 16. I, Cade Blackwater, Alpha of the Ironwood Pack, reject you, Aria Thorn, as my destined mate. The words fell like stones into still water. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the bond, the invisible thread that had connected them since her 21st birthday, snapped. It didn't break gently. It tore through her chest like a rusted blade, shredding something essential. Aria gasped, stumbling backward. Her knees hit the stone floor. Pain radiated outward from her sternum in waves that made her vision white out at the edges. Someone in the crowd laughed. Poor thing. Look at her shake. Did you see her face? Like a kicked puppy. What did she expect? She's barely got wolf in her. Aria's fingers scraped against the cold floor. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The rejection wasn't just emotional, it was physical, a severance that left her nervous system in revolt. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her wolf, the part of her that should have been howling in rage, lay silent and stunned somewhere deep inside. Cade didn't move to help her. His expression remained carved from granite. "You are weak," he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the hall. "Your bloodline is diluted. Your wolf is barely present. The Ironwood Pack does not bind itself to weakness." Aria forced her head up, forced herself to meet his eyes. "Cade, please." "Alpha Cade," he corrected sharply. "You've lost the right to my name." The crowd murmured approval. Aria recognized faces in the torchlight, people she'd grown up with, trained beside, broken bread with. Not one of them looked sympathetic. Pack law was absolute. Strength ruled, weakness died. She'd known this her entire life. She just never thought she'd be on the wrong side of it. "Get up," Cade said. Aria's arms trembled as she pushed herself upright. Standing took everything she had. The pain in her chest was evolving into something else. A hollow ache, like her ribcage had become a tomb. "You will leave Ironwood territory by dawn," Cade continued. "You'll take nothing but what you're wearing. If you're found within our borders after sunrise, you'll be treated as a rogue." "Where am I supposed to go?" The question came out smaller than she intended. "That's not my concern." A woman stepped forward from the crowd, Lydia Frost, Cade's cousin and the pack's head enforcer. She was beautiful in the way that knives are beautiful, sharp, cold, designed to cut. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Should we escort her out now, Alpha?" Lydia's smile was all teeth. "Make sure she doesn't steal anything on her way." "No," Cade said. "Let her walk herself. Let her remember what shame feels like." Lydia looked disappointed, but she stepped back into formation. Aria stood there, swaying slightly, trying to gather the pieces of herself that had scattered across the stone floor. She wanted to scream, wanted to rage, wanted to shift and tear out Cade's throat for doing this to her in front of everyone, for making a spectacle of her destruction. But her wolf remained silent. "Go," Cade said quietly. His eyes flickered with something that might have been regret, but it passed too quickly to be sure. Before I change my mind about mercy. Aria turned. The crowd parted before her like a sea, creating a pathway to the massive wooden doors at the hall's entrance. She walked it slowly, forcing each foot forward. Her boots echoed in the silence. She could feel 300 pairs of eyes boring into her back, cataloging her humiliation. Someone spit as she passed. The saliva landed on her shoulder, warm and degrading. She didn't stop, didn't look, just kept walking. Behind her, she heard Cade's voice ring out. Let this be a lesson. The Ironwood Pack thrives because we cut away rot before it spreads. Strength isn't given, it's proven. And some wolves are simply born to fail. The doors groaned open. Cold night air hit Aria's face like a slap. She stepped through, and they slammed shut behind her with a finality that rattled her bones. She was alone. The Ironwood Pack territory stretched across 40,000 acres of brutal mountain wilderness, dense forests, sheer cliffs, rivers that ran fast and cold enough to kill. The pack compound sat at its heart, a collection of sturdy cabins, training grounds, communal halls, all surrounded by a 12-foot wall of stone and timber. Beyond the wall, the world became hostile fast. Aria had lived her entire life within those walls. She stood outside them now, in the shadow of the main gate, and tried to remember how to breathe. The rejection pain had settled into a constant throb. Her chest felt crushed, like her ribcage had collapsed inward. She pressed a hand over her heart and felt it beating erratically, too fast, then too slow, struggling to find rhythm. Move, she told herself. You have until dawn. Move. But where? But the nearest human town was 60 miles southeast, through territory claimed by the Shadowfen Pack, rivals who'd shoot her on sight if they caught her crossing their land. North was nothing but mountains and snow. West led to the dead zones, areas so contaminated by old magic that even wolves avoided them. That left east, the Fringe. The Fringe was what pack wolves called the narrow strip of unclaimed land between territories, a no-man's land populated by rogues, outcasts, and things that didn't fit anywhere else. It was lawless, dangerous, and exactly the kind of place rejected mates ended up. Aria started walking. The forest closed around her immediately. Pine trees towered overhead, their branches blocking out the moon. Underbrush scraped at her legs. She'd worn her ceremony clothes, dark pants, a simple shirt, boots meant for standing in halls, not hiking through wilderness. Already she could feel blisters forming. She walked for an hour before she had to stop, bracing herself against a tree trunk as her stomach heaved. Nothing came up. She hadn't eaten since morning, but her body went through the motions anyway, rejecting everything. When the spasms passed, she sank down onto the forest floor. This is it, she thought. This is where you die. The forest was full of sounds. Wind through branches, small animals rustling in undergrowth, the distant call of a night bird. Before tonight, these sounds had been comforting. Now they felt predatory. Aria closed her eyes and let herself cry. Not the pretty kind of crying from movies, but the ugly, body-shaking kind that left her face swollen and her throat raw. She cried for the life she'd lost, for the mate who'd thrown her away, for the future that had been ripped from her hands. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she stood up and kept walking. 3 days later, Aria crossed into the Fringe. She knew she'd arrived when the forest changed. The trees here grew twisted, their bark darkened by something that might have been disease or curse. The undergrowth thinned out, replaced by patches of dead earth where nothing grew. The air tasted different, metallic, sharp, like biting down on aluminum foil. She'd run out of water that morning. Food had been gone since day 2. Her lips were cracked, her tongue swollen. The rejection pain had faded to a dull background ache, but it had been replaced by a different kind of suffering. Simple, honest starvation. Aria was dying, and she knew it. She stumbled into a clearing and saw buildings. Shacks, really, cobbled together from scavenged materials. Rusted metal siding, weathered wood, plastic sheeting held down with rocks. Smoke rose from a few chimneys. This was a fringe settlement, one of the desperate little communities that sprang up wherever outcasts gathered. 2 men were standing near the closest shack. They spotted her immediately. "Look what crawled in," the first one said. He was heavy-set, with a scarred face and eyes that calculated angles. "Fresh meat." The second man laughed. He was thinner, younger, with teeth that had gone brown. "She's barely standing, Rake. What's the point?" "Point is she's got boots, coat. Might have other things worth taking." Rake started walking toward Aria. "You lost, girl?" Aria tried to back up, but her legs gave out. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Rake stood over her. "You one of them rejected mates?" "Yeah, you got that look. All broken and hopeless." He crouched down. "Here's how it works in the fringe, sweetheart. You got nothing. You are nothing. So either you got something to trade, or—" Aria's hand shot out and grabbed his throat. She didn't plan it, didn't think about it. 1 second she was collapsed and defeated. The next her fingers were locked around Rake's windpipe, squeezing with a strength that shocked them both. Rake's eyes bulged. He clawed at her hand but couldn't break her grip. The thin man rushed forward, pulling a knife. "Let him go, you crazy!" Aria's other hand moved in a blur, catching the knife mid-swing. The blade sliced into her palm, but she didn't feel it. She twisted, and the thin man yelped as his wrist bones ground together. The knife fell. She threw Rake backward. He crashed into the shack wall hard enough to crack the siding. Then Aria collapsed again, gasping. Her hands were shaking. Blood dripped from her sliced palm, but as she watched, the wound began to close. Not healing, sealing, the edges pulling together with an efficiency that wasn't natural. Rake scrambled to his feet, one hand on his throat. "What the hell are you?" Aria didn't answer. Couldn't. She was staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "Rake, we should go," the thin man said nervously. Something's wrong with her." They ran. Aria stayed on the ground, watching her palm finish healing. The pain from the rejection, which had been a constant companion, suddenly felt distant, muffled, like it was happening to someone else. "What's happening to me?" But the forest gave no answers. And as night began to fall over the fringe, Aria realized she had a more immediate problem. She still had nowhere to go, and now word would spread about the crazy rejected mate who could snap necks with one hand. She forced herself up and started walking deeper into the settlement. The fringe settlement was called Ashwick, which was aspirational given that it was mostly just a collection of shacks arranged in rough circles. About 50 people lived here, Aria guessed. Rogues, outcasts, humans who'd wandered too far from civilization and couldn't find their way back. She moved through it carefully, keeping to shadows. People stared but didn't approach. Word about Rake had already spread. She could hear whispers following her. "That's her. Heard she nearly killed him with one hand. Rejected mate, I'm telling you. They go crazy sometimes." Aria ignored them. She was looking for shelter, somewhere she could collapse for a few hours without someone stealing her boots or cutting her throat. She found it on the eastern edge of the settlement, a shack that looked abandoned, its door hanging crooked on broken hinges. Inside was a single room with dirt floors, a broken cot, and walls that let in wind through gaps in the siding. It smelled like mildew and rodent droppings. It was perfect. Aria shut the door as best she could and sank onto the cot. It creaked but held. She pulled her knees to her chest and let her head fall forward. "You're alive," she told herself. "That's something." But it didn't feel like much. She stayed in Ashwick for 2 weeks. Survival in the fringe followed different rules than pack life. There was no structure, no hierarchy, no communal support. You ate if you could steal or trade for food. You stayed warm if you could build a fire. You stayed alive if you were mean enough to make people think twice about bothering you. Aria learned fast. She traded her ceremony shirt for a canteen and a box of matches. She learned where to find the settlement's water source, a contaminated stream that had to be boiled before drinking. She learned which people to avoid, most of them, and which ones might be useful, very few. And she learned about her body's new abilities. It started with small things. She healed faster than she should. Cuts closed in hours, bruises faded overnight. She could go longer without food than seemed possible. Her senses sharpened. She could hear conversations happening 3 shacks over, could smell rain coming hours before it arrived. Then there were the strange moments. Like when a rogue tried to rob her in the middle of the night and she'd somehow sensed him coming through a wall. Or when she'd caught a rabbit for dinner using reflexes she didn't know she had, moving so fast the animal never saw her coming. Something was changing inside her, growing. The rejected bond had left a void, but that void was filling with something else. Something that didn't feel entirely like wolf. She was sitting by her small fire one night, roasting the rabbit, when someone knocked on her door. "Go away," she called. The door opened anyway. A woman stood in the threshold, old, maybe 70, with silver hair pulled into a long braid and eyes that had seen too much. She wore layers of mismatched clothing and carried a walking stick carved with symbols Aria didn't recognize. "You're the rejected one," the woman said, not a question. So you're bleeding power all over this settlement, and it's making people nervous." The woman stepped inside without invitation. "My name is Mira. I read Bones and Futures, among other things. And you, girl, have something very interesting happening inside you." Aria tensed. "I don't want any fortune-telling nonsense." "Good, because I'm not selling anything." Mira settled onto the floor with surprising grace for her age. "I'm warning you, that thing waking up in your blood, it's not wolf. It's older, meaner. And if you don't learn to control it soon, it's going to control you." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Mira's eyes gleamed in the firelight. "You feel it, don't you? That itch under your skin, that whisper in your bones. Your pack thought you were weak because your wolf barely showed. They were looking at the wrong thing." Aria's hands clenched. "What thing?" "Your grandmother was Ironwood pack, yes? But your grandfather, what was he?" "Human. A human who married into the pack." Mira smiled. It wasn't a comforting expression. "That's what they told you. But humans don't pass down power that makes rejected mates heal like skinwalkers and move like ghosts. So either your grandfather was lying about what he was, or someone further back in your family tree was something other than what they claimed." The rabbit had started to burn. Aria pulled it from the fire mechanically, her mind racing. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you've got old blood. The kind that doesn't wake up until you're broken hard enough to crack the seal." Mira leaned forward. "The rejection didn't destroy you, girl. It activated you. And unless you learn what you are and how to use it, you're going to burn yourself up from the inside." "Can you teach me?" "No." Mira stood, using her walking stick for leverage. "I can read what's written. I can't change it. But I can tell you this. The Ironwood pack is going to face something soon that their precious alpha can't handle. When that happens, you'll have a choice. Stay hidden out here and let them burn, or go back and show them what they threw away." "They'd kill me if I went back." "Maybe. Or maybe they'd bow." Mira moved to the door, then paused. "That power in your blood? It doesn't make you wolf. It makes you something wolves used to fear back when the world was younger and the rules were different. Think about that." She left, closing the broken door behind her. Aria sat alone with her burned rabbit and her racing thoughts. Something wolves used to fear. She looked down at her hands. The same hands that had healed wounds in hours, that had crushed Rake's throat without effort, that sometimes trembled with an energy she didn't understand. Maybe Mira was crazy. Maybe this was all nonsense, but deep in her chest, where the bond had broken, something pulsed in agreement. The attack came 3 weeks after Aria arrived in Ashwick. She was sleeping, truly sleeping, for the first time since the rejection, when screams yanked her awake. She grabbed the knife she'd traded for and was out the door in seconds. The settlement was chaos. Rogues were pouring in from the western edge. A coordinated raid, at least 20 of them, all shifted into their wolf forms. They were tearing through shacks, dragging people out, taking anything valuable and destroying what they couldn't carry. This wasn't random. This was organized. Aria watched a rogue drag a woman from her home by her hair. The woman was screaming, begging. The rogue just laughed and shifted back to human form, his hands around her throat. Something inside Aria snapped. She didn't remember crossing the distance. 1 second she was by her shack, the next she had the rogue by the back of his neck. She slammed his face into the ground hard enough to leave an imprint. Once, twice, 3 times until he stopped moving. The woman scrambled away, terror in her eyes, but not terror of the rogue, terror of Aria. Aria didn't have time to process it. Another rogue was charging her, massive in wolf form, jaws open to tear out her throat. She stepped aside at the last possible second and brought her knife up, opening his belly as he passed. The wolf crashed and didn't get up. Power surged through her, electric and intoxicating. Her vision sharpened until she could see in perfect detail, every movement, every threat, every opportunity. Time seemed to slow down. A rogue came from her left. She ducked under his swing and drove her knife up through his jaw. Another from the right. She caught his arm mid-strike and broke it at the elbow. He howled. She broke his neck, 4 down. The remaining rogues noticed her then. 6 of them converged, moving with the practiced coordination of a pack that hunted together. They circled her, forcing her back against a burning shack. Aria realized she was smiling. The first one lunged. She caught him midair by the throat, her fingers punching through fur and skin like they were paper. Blood sprayed hot across her face. She threw the body at the second rogue, bowling him over. The third came from behind. She sensed him somehow, dropped low, and swept his legs. He hit the ground and she was on him, driving her knife into his chest. Once, twice, 3 times, until the blade stuck between ribs. She left it there and grabbed a burning piece of wood from the shack wall instead. The remaining rogues hesitated. "Come on," Aria said. Her voice sounded different, deeper, resonant, carrying an authority that made the rogues' ears flatten. "You wanted easy prey. Come take it." They ran. All of them turned and bolted back into the forest, leaving their dead behind. Aria stood in the burning settlement, covered in blood that wasn't hers, holding a piece of flaming wood like a torch. The surviving residents stared at her in absolute silence. Mira emerged from the shadows, leaning on her walking stick. "And so it begins," she said quietly. Aria dropped the wood. The power that had flooded through her was draining away, leaving her shaking and cold. She looked down at her hands, at the blood, at the bodies she'd made. "What am I?" she whispered. Mira walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. "You're the thing they should have been afraid to throw away." After that night, Aria's life in Ashwick changed. People stopped avoiding her. They started watching her instead, with a mix of fear and hope that made her uncomfortable. The settlement's unofficial leader, a grizzled rogue named Cole, approached her the morning after the attack. "Those raiders will be back," he said without preamble. "Bigger numbers, better prepared. They know we're weak now." "Then leave." "Can't. This is all we got." Cole studied her with sharp eyes. "But you could help us. Teach us to fight back, or at least be here when they come again." "I'm not a warrior. You killed 6 trained raiders like it was nothing. Don't tell me what you're not." He paused. "We can't pay much, but we can offer you a real place here, a home." Aria almost laughed. Home. Like this collection of desperate outcasts could ever be home. But where else did she have? "I'll think about it," she said. She spent the next week thinking about very little else. The truth was, fighting the raiders had felt good. Not good in a healthy way. Good, like scratching an itch that had been driving her insane. For the first time since the rejection, she'd felt powerful instead of powerless, useful instead of discarded. And that power inside her, the thing Mira claimed was old blood. It had sung during the fight, practically purred with satisfaction. She was standing by the settlement's water source, lost in thought, when she heard it. A howl. Long, low, carrying across miles of forest. Every hair on Aria's body stood up. She knew that howl. It was pack communication, a warning signal. But not just any pack. Ironwood. Something was wrong. She stood frozen, listening as the howl was taken up by other voices. 3, 5, 10. The entire pack was calling, and the sound carried a note of desperation that made her chest tighten. They were in trouble. Good, part of her thought viciously. Let them suffer. Let them feel what it's like to be powerless. But another part, a part she hated, whispered, "They're still your people." "You hear that?" Mira appeared beside her, seeming to materialize from nowhere. "That's fear. The kind of fear that comes when you realize your strength isn't enough." "It's not my problem, isn't it?" Mira tilted her head. "You gonna tell me you don't feel the pull? Don't wonder what's strong enough to make an alpha like Cade Blackwater sound scared." Aria's hands clenched. "He rejected me, cast me out. I owe him nothing." "True. But this isn't about what you owe. It's about what you are." Mira's eyes gleamed. "You can stay here, hide in the fringe, pretend that power in your blood is just for killing raiders. Or you can go back and show them exactly what they lost when they threw you away." The howls continued, growing more frantic. Aria closed her eyes. She thought about Cade's face when he'd rejected her, thought about the laughter of the crowd. Thought about 3 weeks of crawling through forest, starving and broken. She thought about the power that had awakened inside her, violent and dark and hers. When she opened her eyes, her decision was made. If I go back and they try to kill me, they won't. Mira interrupted. Not if you show up as salvation instead of threat. Timing is everything, girl. You show up when they're desperate, offer them a way out, and they'll have no choice but to see you differently. And if they don't? Mira smiled that terrible smile. Then you make them see, one way or another. Oh, Aria left Ashwick that night. She moved through the forest like a ghost, faster than she should have been able to, her senses sharp enough to detect dangers before they materialized. The journey that had taken her 3 days dying now took less than 1 day moving with purpose. The howls guided her home. She reached the ironwood border just before dawn. The wall loomed ahead exactly as she remembered it, 12 feet of stone and timber, built to keep threats out and pack members in. Aria stood in the shadow of the trees and felt the bond scar in her chest pulse. This place had been her entire world once. Now it felt foreign, hostile. The howling had stopped an hour ago, replaced by an eerie silence that set her teeth on edge. She approached the wall carefully, expecting guards. Found none. That was wrong. Ironwood always posted sentries. Aria scaled the wall, another thing she shouldn't have been able to do, but her fingers found holds that weren't there, and her muscles pulled her up like gravity had become optional. She dropped down on the other side and went still, listening. Voices. Distant, coming from the direction of the gathering hall. She moved toward them, keeping to shadows. The compound looked like it had been hit by a storm, buildings damaged, scorch marks on walls, blood trails leading toward the center. What the hell happened here? She reached the gathering hall and pressed herself against the wall, listening to the chaos inside. Can't hold them off again, Cade. We lost 12 warriors last night, and they'll be back at sundown. I'm aware of the timeline, Marcus. That was Cade's voice, tight with stress. Then do something. You're the alpha. I'm trying. A crash like a fist hitting stone. The Shadow Wolves shouldn't even exist. They're supposed to be extinct. Every record says, well, clearly the records were wrong, Marcus again, nearly shouting. Because they're out there, they're real, and they're going to wipe us out unless we run. We don't run. Ironwood doesn't run. Then Ironwood dies. Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Then Lydia's voice, cold and calculating. What about calling for help? The Shadowfen pack might... Shadowfen would let us burn and pick our territory clean afterward. You know that. More silence. Aria's mind raced. Shadow Wolves. She'd heard the stories. Ancient predators from before the packs organized. Things that hunted werewolves the way werewolves hunted deer. They were supposed to be myths, cautionary tales told to young pups. But the fear in Cade's voice was real. There has to be something, someone else said. Some weapon, some strategy. There isn't. Cade sounded like he was at the breaking point. We've tried everything. They're faster than us, stronger than us, and they hunt in the dark where our advantages disappear. We're outmatched. So what do we do? No answer. Aria pulled back from the wall. Her heart was pounding, that strange power in her blood responding to the pack's fear like metal to a magnet. She could leave, should leave, let them figure it out themselves. But Mira's words echoed, you show up when they're desperate, offer them a way out, and they'll have no choice but to see you differently. And beneath that, darker and more honest. You want them to see what they threw away. Aria took a deep breath. Then she walked through the gathering hall doors. Well, every head turned. The hall fell silent so fast it was like someone had cut all sound with a knife. 300 eyes locked onto Aria as she stood in the doorway, covered in fringe dirt and dried blood, very much alive when she should have been dead or gone. Cade stood at the hall's center, surrounded by his inner circle. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, confusion, and something that might have been relief before anger locked it down. Aria. Her name came out flat, dangerous. You're not supposed to be here. I know. She walked forward, her boots echoing in the silence. The crowd parted before her just like they had on rejection night, but this time it felt different. This time they looked uncertain. But I heard you howling, and I thought you might need help. Lydia laughed, sharp and brittle. Help? From you? You can barely... I killed 6 raiders in Ashwick 3 weeks ago. Aria interrupted, still walking toward Cade. Alone, with my bare hands and a kitchen knife. So maybe don't finish that sentence. Lydia's mouth snapped shut. Aria stopped 10 feet from Cade, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the dried blood on his shirt, the way his hands trembled slightly before he caught himself and stilled them. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Shadow wolves, Aria said. That's what you're fighting. Cade's jaw tightened. How did you see? I listened outside. Old habit. She met his eyes, refusing to look away even though every instinct screamed at her to submit to the alpha. They're going to come back at sundown. You can't stop them with what you have. Your warriors are too slow, too loud, and they fight like pack wolves against an enemy that doesn't care about pack rules. And you can do better? Cade's voice dripped skepticism. Yes. The word hung in the air like a blade. Marcus stepped forward. Beta, second in command, usually the voice of reason. Cade, she's rejected, Aria finished. I know, but rejection broke something in me, and what grew back is different, stronger. She held up her hand, letting them see the faint scars that had healed too fast. I felt them out there. The shadow wolves. They move through the dark like smoke, hunt by fear. You can't fight them like normal enemies because they're not normal. But I am. You're not even full wolf, Lydia spat. Exactly. Aria turned to look at her. Shadow wolves hunt wolves. They're built for it. But I'm not just wolf anymore. I'm something they won't expect. Cade stared at her for a long moment. She could see him calculating, weighing options he didn't have. Why? He finally asked. Why come back? Why help the pack that threw you out? Aria smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Because when you survive this, and you will survive this, I want you to remember every single day for the rest of your life that the girl you rejected as weakness saved you when your strength failed. She let that sink in. Then she turned to address the entire hall. Here's my offer. I fight your shadow wolves. I teach your warriors how to survive them. I keep this pack alive through sundown and every night after until the threat is gone. Her voice carried to every corner. And in return, you give me back my place here, not as a rejected mate, as an equal, as someone who earned her spot with blood and survival. You can't just demand, someone started. I'm not demanding, Aria cut in. I'm offering. You can accept and live, or you can refuse and die. I don't actually care what you choose anymore. It was a lie. Part of her cared desperately, but they didn't need to know that. Cade looked at his inner circle, looked at the hall full of exhausted, terrified wolves, looked back at Aria, this girl he'd rejected as too weak to bother with. If you fail, I won't. If you fail, Cade continued, and the pack suffers because I trusted you, I'll kill you myself. Fair enough. Aria extended her hand. Do we have a deal, Alpha? Cade stared at her hand for a long moment. Then he took it. We have a deal. Their hands clasped, and Aria felt that old bond scar pulse once. Not healing, not reconnecting, just acknowledging she'd come back. And this time she wasn't leaving until they understood exactly what they'd thrown away. The training yard was a mess of churned mud and broken equipment. Aria stood at its center, watching 20 of Ironwood's so-called elite warriors circle her like she was a bomb that might detonate. Morning sun cut through the pine trees, casting long shadows that made everyone look taller than they were. You want me to teach you? She said, voice carrying across the silence. But you don't want to listen, so let's make this simple. She pointed at the biggest warrior, a man named Garrett, who'd laughed the loudest on rejection night. You, come at me like I'm a shadow wolf. Garrett glanced at Cade, who stood at the yard's edge with his arms crossed. The Alpha nodded once. Don't hold back, Cade said. Garrett shifted. Bones cracked and reformed, fur sprouting as he dropped to all fours. He was massive in wolf form, 300 pounds of muscle and teeth, bred for violence. The kind of warrior that made enemies think twice. He charged. Aria didn't move until he was 3 feet away. Then she dropped low and rolled left, coming up behind him as his momentum carried him past. She drove her boot into his hindquarters, sending him sprawling face first into the mud. The watching wolves muttered. Garrett scrambled up, shook himself, and charged again, faster this time, learning. Aria sidestepped. Her hand shot out and caught him by the scruff of his neck mid-leap. For a second she held him there, suspended, his back legs kicking uselessly. Then she threw him, Hard. He hit the training yard fence with enough force to crack 2 posts. That's the problem, Aria said, not even breathing hard. You're predictable. Shadow wolves aren't. They don't charge in straight lines. They don't give you time to set your stance. They come from angles you don't expect, hit you where you're soft, and they're gone before you can retaliate. Garrett shifted back to human, coughing. Blood trickled from his nose. So what do we do? You stop fighting like pack wolves. Aria walked over and helped him up. His eyes widened. She'd just humiliated him, and now she was extending courtesy. Pack tactics work when everyone follows the same rules. Shadow wolves don't follow any rules. They're chaos. So you have to become chaos right back. That's not how we train, Lydia called from the sidelines. She stood next to Cade, perfect as always in her training leathers. Pack coordination is what keeps us alive. Pack coordination got 12 of your people killed last night. Aria shot back. You want to do the same thing tonight and lose 12 more? Lydia's face went cold. You don't get to talk about our dead. You weren't here. No, I was dying in the fringe. But I lived, which is more than your dead can say. Aria turned back to the warriors. Shadow wolves hunt in darkness. They use fear as a weapon. The more scared you are, the easier you are to kill. So first lesson, you need to stop being afraid. A younger warrior, barely 20, with nervous eyes, spoke up. How? They're literally made of shadows. How do you fight something you can't see? You stop trying to see it. Aria closed her eyes. Listen. She stood still, head tilted. The training yard held its breath. Then Aria moved, fast. Her hand shot out and grabbed something from the air. Marcus, who'd been trying to circle behind her silently as a test. She had him by the wrist before he'd made a sound. Sound isn't just noise, she said, releasing him. It's vibration, air displacement. If you stop relying on your eyes and start feeling the space around you, you'll know when something's coming even if you can't see it. That's impossible, someone muttered. It was impossible for me 3 weeks ago, too. Aria opened her eyes. But rejection has a way of breaking you open to things you didn't know you could do. Pain teaches. And you're all about to learn a lot. She spent the next hour running them through drills that made no sense by pack standards. Fighting blind, moving without sound, attacking from unexpected angles. Half the warriors failed miserably. The other half failed worse. Cade watched it all with unreadable eyes. When they broke for water, he approached her. This better work, he said quietly. It will. You sound confident for someone who's never actually fought a shadow wolf. Aria met his gaze. I've fought plenty of things trying to kill me lately. I'm still here. They're not. Something flickered across Cade's face. Maybe respect. Maybe just exhaustion. The pack is watching you, waiting for you to fail. I know. If you do, they won't just reject you again. They'll tear you apart. Let them try. Aria took a drink from her canteen. I'm not the same girl you threw away, Cade. That girl would have been scared of you. This version? She smiled without warmth. This version wonders if you're scared of me. Cade's jaw tightened. For a second, she thought he might actually answer. Instead, he just walked away, barking orders at the warriors to get back in formation. Lydia appeared at Aria's elbow. You're enjoying this. What? Making him uncomfortable. Making all of us uncomfortable. Lydia's voice was ice wrapped in silk. You think because he made a desperate deal, you've won something. But the second this crisis passes, you're gone again. You know that, right? Aria turned to face her fully. Lydia was beautiful, sharp cheekbones, perfect skin, the kind of woman who looked good even covered in training sweat, the kind of woman Cade should have chosen instead. You want to be Luna, Aria said. Not a question. Lydia didn't deny it. I'm qualified. Strong bloodline, combat tested, actually loyal to this pack, unlike some people. And yet here I am, teaching warriors you couldn't keep alive. One lucky fight in the fringe doesn't make you a warrior. You're right. Aria stepped closer into Lydia's space. 6 fights make me a warrior. Surviving rejection makes me dangerous. And coming back when I could have let you all burn? That makes me something you'll never be. What's that? Necessary. Lydia's hand twitched toward the knife at her belt. Aria saw it, saw the calculation in her eyes, wondering if she could get away with it, if the alpha would care if the rejected mate had an accident. Try it, Aria said softly. Please. The moment stretched. Then Cade's voice cut across the yard. Lydia, We need you for perimeter check. Lydia stepped back, smile returning like she'd never lost it. This isn't over. I know. She walked away and Aria realized her hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from want. Part of her had hoped Lydia would pull that knife, give her an excuse to what? Prove she was the monster they thought she was? Aria forced her hands still and returned to training. The day crawled past. By afternoon, half the warriors were moving differently. Still clumsy, still obvious, but starting to understand. The other half looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. When the sun started its descent toward the horizon, Cade called a halt. "Sundown in 2 hours," he announced. "Everyone to positions. Aria, you're with the forward scouts." "No," Aria said. "I'm going out alone." The yard went quiet. "That's suicide," Marcus said. "That's the point." Aria checked the knives she'd borrowed from the armory. Shadow wolves are drawn to fear and group energy. A pack huddled together is basically ringing a dinner bell, but one target, moving confidently through their territory, that's not prey behavior. That's predator behavior. It'll confuse them. Or it'll just get you killed faster, Lydia pointed out. Maybe. But if I'm right, I'll draw them out where you can see the attack patterns. Learn how they move. And if I'm wrong, Aria shrugged, then you'll know not to try it again. Cade stared at her. You're serious. Dead serious, no pun intended. I can't allow. You don't get to allow or forbid me anything, Aria interrupted. I'm not Pack anymore, remember? You made that very clear, so I'm offering my services as a consultant, and my professional opinion is that I need to go out there alone. The muscles in Cade's jaw worked. She could see him wrestling with it, the alpha instinct to protect warring with the desperate need for any advantage. If you die out there, he finally said, I'm not sending anyone to retrieve your body. Wouldn't expect you to. And if you run, I won't. Aria locked eyes with him. I came back to prove a point, Cade. Can't do that if I run. He held her gaze for another long moment, then nodded once, sharp and final. You have 2 hours. If you're not back by full dark, we assume you're dead and move to defensive positions. Fair. Aria walked toward the gate. Behind her, she heard the pack exploding into worried conversation. She didn't look back. Looking back would mean she cared what they thought, and she'd spent 3 weeks learning not to care. The gate guard, a young wolf named Peter, watched her approach with wide eyes. You really going out there alone? Yep. That's... He struggled for words. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. Or the stupidest. Aria smiled. Usually the same thing. He opened the gate for her. She stepped through into the forest beyond, and the gate clanged shut behind her like a prison door. The forest felt different on this side. Darker, even though the sun was still up. Colder. The trees seemed to lean in, watching with the attention of things that had seen too much dying. Aria walked deeper into the woods, listening. At first there was nothing, just normal forest sounds, birds, wind, small animals going about their business. She kept walking, letting her new senses spread out like roots, feeling for anything that didn't belong. An hour passed. The sun dropped lower. Shadows stretched like fingers reaching across the ground. Then the birds stopped singing. Aria froze. The sudden silence was deafening, pressing against her eardrums like physical weight. She turned slowly, scanning the trees. Nothing. But something was watching. She could feel eyes on her skin, raising goosebumps despite the leather jacket she'd borrowed. I know you're there, she said to the empty forest. No response, just that crushing silence. Aria closed her eyes and did what she'd been teaching the warriors. Stopped trying to see, started trying to feel. Air currents, vibrations, the subtle shift of weight on forest floor. There, 20 feet to her left, something had just moved. Not walking, flowing, like smoke given form. She opened her eyes but didn't look directly at it. Predators tracked eye movement. Instead, she kept her gaze forward and spoke again. Shadow Wolf, I've heard stories about you, about how you hunt the hunters, how you're supposed to be extinct. She pulled a knife slowly, making sure the motion was visible. But you're not extinct, you're just patient, waiting for the world to forget you existed so you could come back and feast. A sound. Low. Almost below hearing range, a growl that resonated in bone marrow. "Here's the thing," Aria continued, turning now to face the space where she felt the presence. "I'm not afraid of you. I should be. I know that. But something broke inside me when I got rejected, and what grew back doesn't scare easy." The shadow moved. She saw it this time. A ripple in the air, like heat shimmer, but cold, flowing between trees with impossible fluidity. Then it stepped into a patch of fading sunlight, and Arya's breath caught. Shadow Wolf was a perfect name. It looked like someone had carved a wolf shape from darkness itself and taught it to move. No fur, just pure black that seemed to absorb light, eyes like frozen stars, teeth that glowed faintly white against the darkness of its body. It was beautiful and terrible and completely unnatural. They stared at each other. The shadow wolf tilted its head, studying her. She could feel its confusion. She didn't smell like prey, didn't move like prey, but she wasn't pack either, wasn't quite wolf. What was she? "Good question," Arya murmured. "I'm still figuring that out myself." The shadow wolf lunged, fast, impossibly fast. 1 second it was 15 feet away, the next it was on her, jaws going for her throat. Arya dropped and rolled, felt teeth snap closed inches from her neck, came up with the knife already slashing. The blade passed through the shadow wolf's shoulder and kept going. No resistance, like cutting smoke. The wolf reformed behind her and struck again, claws raked across her back, opening 4 lines of fire. Arya gasped and spun, but it was already gone, circling. Okay. Physical attacks didn't work. Good to know. The wolf came again from a different angle. This time, Arya didn't try to cut it. She dropped the knife and caught its jaws with her bare hands, one hand on the upper jaw, one on the lower. The shadow flesh felt like ice and electricity, burning and numbing at the same time. The wolf thrashed, trying to bite down. Arya held on, muscles screaming. That power in her blood surged up to meet the challenge, flooding her arms with strength that shouldn't exist. She looked into those star-bright eyes and saw intelligence, old intelligence. This thing had been hunting wolves since before the packs formed, before civilization carved up the wilderness. "I'm not wolf," she told it. "Not completely. So your instincts don't work on me." The shadow wolf stopped thrashing, stared at her, then it dissolved, simply fell apart into wisps of darkness that scattered on the wind. Arya stood alone in the forest, breathing hard, hands still tingling from contact with shadow flesh. Blood ran down her back from the claw marks. She touched the wounds and her fingers came away red. But she was alive. A howl rose from the direction of the compound, the warning signal. More shadow wolves were coming. Arya ran. She burst through the gate just as full darkness fell. Warriors were already in defensive positions, archers on the walls, fighters grouped in the courtyard, fire pits blazing to push back the shadows. Cade saw her, and his eyes widened. "You're bleeding." "I'm alive." Arya moved past him toward the wall. "They're coming. At least 6, maybe more. They move like smoke, and physical weapons don't work. The blade passes right through them." "Then how do we fight them?" Marcus demanded. "Fire, light, anything that pushes back darkness." Arya grabbed a torch from a wall sconce. "And you don't let them bite you. Their teeth are real enough." As if summoned by her words, the shadow wolves appeared. They flowed out of the forest like a flood of darkness, moving between trees with that same impossible fluidity Arya had seen. 6, 7, 8 of them, all converging on the compound. "Light the perimeter fires," Cade roared. Warriors scrambled to obey. Flames roared to life in trenches dug around the wall, creating a barrier of light. The shadow wolves recoiled, circling but not crossing. For a moment, Arya thought it might actually work. Then one of the wolves simply leaped over the fire, 20 feet straight up, clearing the wall and landing in the courtyard among the clustered warriors. Chaos erupted. The shadow wolf tore through them like a scythe through wheat. Warriors swung weapons that passed through it harmlessly. It bit one man's arm off at the shoulder, disemboweled another with a casual swipe of its claws. Arya jumped down from the wall and ran toward it, torch in one hand, borrowed sword in the other. The wolf saw her coming and pivoted to meet her. She threw the torch. It hit the wolf square in the face. For an instant, the shadow flesh ignited, burning with a cold blue flame. The wolf screamed, a sound like wind through a graveyard, and thrashed. Arya didn't give it time to recover. She drove the sword point first into the burning mass, and this time the blade caught, sank in. The wolf's scream cut off abruptly, and it collapsed into ash. "Fireworks!" she shouted. "Cover your weapons in it!" More shadow wolves were coming over the wall now. 4. 5. They'd learned to jump the barrier. Warriors scrambled to light torches, to wrap blades in burning cloth. The courtyard became a nightmare of fire and shadow, screaming and blood. Aria fought in the center of it all, that strange power in her blood singing with every kill. She burned 3 more wolves, learning their patterns. They always struck from the left first, always went for the throat or belly, always tried to circle back if the first attack failed. But there were too many, and the pack warriors, even with fire, were still too slow. A shadow wolf got past the defensive line and bolted toward the residential cabins where the non-combatants sheltered. Aria saw it happen, saw the wolf crash through a door. She ran after it. Inside the cabin, a woman was shielding 2 children behind her, backing into a corner. The shadow wolf stalked toward them, taking its time, savoring the fear. Aria tackled it from behind. They crashed through a table, scattering dishes. The wolf twisted in her grip, jaws snapping at her face. She drove her knee into what passed for its stomach and felt something give. It howled and threw her off. Aria hit the wall hard enough to crack the wood. Stars exploded across her vision. The wolf advanced, ready to finish her. Then the woman stepped forward with a kitchen knife and stabbed it in the flank. The blade passed through harmlessly, but the distraction was enough. Aria grabbed a burning log from the fireplace and swung it like a club. It connected with the wolf's head, and fire spread across its shadow flesh like oil catching light. The wolf burned, screamed, died. Aria dropped the log and turned to the woman. "Get your kids to the central hall, now." The woman nodded, too shocked to speak, and gathered her children. Aria stumbled back out into the courtyard. Her vision was swimming, her back screaming from the earlier wounds and new bruises. She'd lost count of how many wolves she'd killed. The courtyard was littered with ash and blood and bodies. Then she saw Cade. He was fighting 2 shadow wolves at once, a burning spear in each hand. He was good, fast, precise, everything an alpha should be. But he was tiring. She could see it in the way his movement slowed, how his breathing came ragged. One of the wolves fainted left. Cade followed. The other wolf struck from the right, jaws clamping down on his shoulder. Cade screamed. Aria was moving before she realized it, crossing the courtyard in a blur. She grabbed the wolf by its spine, felt that ice electricity burn her hands again, and ripped it off Cade. The wolf turned on her, snarling. She headbutted it. The impact sent darkness exploding from its skull. It staggered. Aria followed up with a punch to its throat, then another to its chest, each hit sending more shadow flesh scattering. The wolf tried to reform, but she didn't give it time, just kept hitting until there was nothing left but ash on her bloody knuckles. The second wolf saw what she'd done and ran, just turned and bolted back over the wall into the forest. Silence fell. Aria stood in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by dead and dying. Her hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. That power in her blood was draining away, leaving her cold and hollow. Cade struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his torn shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers. "You..." He stared at her. "You killed it with your bare hands." "Yeah." Aria's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Turns out punching shadows works if you hit hard enough." The pack was staring. All of them. Warriors, civilians, everyone who'd witnessed the fight. They looked at her the way you'd look at a natural disaster, with awe and fear and the knowledge that some forces can't be controlled. Lydia appeared from somewhere, her perfect face smudged with ash. She looked at the destruction, at Aria standing in the center of it, covered in blood and shadow ash, and something like hatred flickered across her features before she buried it. "Get the wounded to the healers," she said, voice crisp. "Count the dead, repair the barriers." People scattered to obey, grateful for orders that made sense. Cade walked over to Aria slowly, favoring his injured side. They stood face to face in the ruined courtyard. "You saved my life," he said. "Don't sound so surprised." "After what I did to you? This isn't about you." Aria met his eyes. "This is about me proving I'm not the weakness you thought I was. Your life just happened to be convenient leverage." It was a lie. Seeing him hurt had sent something primal screaming through her chest, bond or no bond. But he didn't need to know that. Cade studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. "Who are you?" I'm the girl you should have kept. Before he could respond, Marcus ran up. Alpha, we found something. You need to see this. They followed him to the eastern wall. A warrior was standing guard over something in the shadows, a shape that didn't move, didn't dissolve. A shadow wolf. Dead, but intact. It didn't turn to ash, the warrior said nervously. I stabbed it through the heart with a fire blade and it just stopped. But it's still here. Aria approached slowly. The dead wolf looked even stranger now, its shadow flesh frozen in place, still absorbing light but no longer moving. She knelt and touched it carefully. The flesh was solid, cold as ice but definitely physical. They're not actually made of shadow, she murmured. That's just camouflage. Underneath they're real. Which means they can be killed, Cade said. Really killed. But why didn't this one turn to ash, Marcus asked. Aria examined the body more carefully. The fire blade had gone straight through the heart, yes, but the angle was perfect. The blade had severed something at the base of the skull, too. There, she said, pointing. That's the control center, the part that makes the shadow flesh work. You have to destroy that specifically, or they'll just keep reforming. Cade crouched beside her. Can you teach the warriors where to strike? I can try, but it's a small target, and they move fast. Most fighters won't be able to hit it in combat. But you can. It wasn't a question. Aria stood, wincing as her abused muscles protested. Yeah, I can. Then you're our best weapon against these things. The words hung in the air between them. Best weapon. Not weak, not rejected, necessary. Funny how that works, Aria said softly. A few weeks ago I wasn't worth keeping alive. Now I'm your best weapon. Cade had the grace to look uncomfortable. Aria, but don't. She held up a hand. Don't apologize, don't explain. Just remember this feeling, needing someone you threw away. Remember it when you look at me. When you look at anyone you think is weak. She walked away before he could respond, heading toward the healer's cabin. Her back wounds had reopened during the fight, and blood was soaking through her shirt. Behind her, she heard Lydia's voice, pitched just loud enough to carry, "Useful isn't the same as trustworthy." Aria smiled to herself. Let them doubt. Let them worry. Fear kept people sharp, and she needed them sharp for what was coming. Because that shadow wolf that ran, it would go back to its pack. Tell them there was something here they didn't understand, something that could kill them, which meant next time they wouldn't come with 8 wolves. They'd come with everything they had. The healer's cabin smelled like herbs and something sharper underneath. Infection, maybe, or just fear seeping through the walls. Aria sat on a wooden bench while an elderly woman named Ruth cleaned the claw marks on her back with hands that shook slightly. These should have killed you, Ruth muttered, dabbing at torn flesh. 4 lines, each one deep enough to see bone. But they're already closing. Aria didn't answer. She was watching the window, tracking shadows that moved between buildings outside. The pack was regrouping, counting losses, preparing for the next attack. She could hear Marcus shouting orders, Lydia's clipped responses, the low murmur of frightened voices. 17 dead, Ruth said quietly. Another 9 won't make it through the night. And that's with you here helping. Without you, she tied off the bandage with more force than necessary. You're either blessed or cursed, girl. Haven't figured out which yet. Does it matter? Suppose not. Ruth packed away her supplies. You're keeping us alive either way, though some folks are starting to wonder if the price is worth it. What price? Ruth gave her a long look. You. What you're becoming. I've been pack healer for 40 years, and I've never seen anything heal like you do. Never seen anyone move like you moved tonight. Whatever's waking up in your blood, it's not wolf, and wolves don't trust what they can't name. Before Aria could respond, the door slammed open. Cade stood in the threshold, his shoulder freshly bandaged, fury written across his face. We need to talk. Now. Aria stood slowly, testing her newly bandaged back. It pulled, but held. About? Outside. Privately. Ruth glanced between them, then quietly excused herself. When the door closed behind her, Cade stepped closer. You knew, he said flatly. You knew they'd come back with more. I suspected. You suspected. His voice was dangerously quiet. 17 people are dead because you suspected but didn't warn us? I did warn you. I said physical weapons don't work. I said they move like smoke. I told you exactly what to expect, and your warriors still weren't fast enough. Cade's hand shot out and grabbed her arm. Not violently, but firm enough to make a point. Don't play games with me, Aria. You're holding something back. I can see it. What aren't you telling us? Aria looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. Something in her expression made him release her and take a step back. You want the truth? She asked. Fine. The Shadow Wolves aren't just hunting randomly. They're testing us. Tonight was reconnaissance. They wanted to see what we're capable of, find our weaknesses. That wolf that ran? It's reporting back right now, and when they come again, they'll bring their full force. How many? I don't know. Dozens? Maybe? However many it takes to wipe out an entire pack in one night. Cade's face went pale. When? Soon. Tomorrow night, maybe the night after. They won't give us time to reinforce or call for help. Then we evacuate. Get the civilians out, fall back to where? Aria cut him off. They move faster than we do. They hunt in darkness. You evacuate and they'll pick you off in the forest like deer. Your only chance is to make a stand here, where you have walls and fire. We can't hold against dozens of them. No, Aria agreed, but I can. Silence fell between them. Outside, someone was crying, a sound that carried through the compound like a wound that wouldn't close. You can't fight them all alone, Cade said finally. Watch me. That's not... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. She could see the alpha warring with something else in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe just desperation. I can't let you do that. I can't send you out there to die. Why not? You threw me out to die 4 weeks ago. The words landed like a slap. Cade flinched. That was different. How? I thought... He struggled with it. I thought I was protecting the pack, cutting away weakness before it spread. And now? Now I think I made a mistake. Aria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think? 17 corpses, and you think maybe you were wrong. I know I was wrong, Cade's voice rose. I know I rejected the one person who could have prevented this. I know I'm responsible for every death tonight because I was too blind to see what you were. Is that what you want to hear? What I want, Aria said quietly, is for you to stop thinking about what you need and start thinking about what's right. Those Shadow Wolves are coming whether you like it or not. Either you let me fight them my way, or we all die together. Your choice, Alpha. Before Cade could respond, an explosion rocked the compound. They ran outside. The eastern wall was on fire, not the defensive fires they'd lit earlier, but real flames consuming wood and stone. Warriors were scrambling with buckets of water, but the fire spread too fast, feeding on something that water couldn't touch. Marcus appeared through the smoke, his face black with soot. It's not natural fire, we can't put it out. Aria moved to the wall and touched the stone. Heat seared her palm, but she held contact, feeling for the source. There, a residue, cold despite the flames. Shadow magic. The wolves had marked the wall somehow, left something behind that would ignite later. They're smarter than we thought, she said. This is a message. They're telling us the walls won't protect us. Can you stop it? Cade asked. Aria closed her eyes and reached for that power in her blood. It responded immediately, surging up like a river breaking through ice. She pushed it into the wall, letting it flow through stone and flame. The fire went out, just stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. Every warrior within sight stopped and stared. Aria pulled her hand back. The palm was badly burned, skin blackened and cracking. As they watched, the burn began to heal, new skin growing over damage that should have taken weeks to recover from. What are you? Marcus breathed. I don't know, Aria admitted. But whatever it is, it's the only thing standing between you and extinction. So maybe stop questioning it and start being grateful. She walked away before anyone could respond, heading toward her temporary quarters, a small cabin on the compound's edge that no one else wanted. Her hands were shaking again, worse than before. The power was getting stronger, harder to control. Every time she used it, it wanted more. Mira's words echoed. Unless you learn what you are and how to use it, you're going to burn yourself up from the inside. Aria shut the cabin door and leaned against it, trying to breathe through the nausea. Her reflection stared back from a cracked mirror on the wall, wild-eyed, blood-stained, barely recognizable as the girl who'd stood in the gathering hall accepting her rejection. A knock at the door made her jump. "Go away," she called. The door opened anyway. Lydia stepped inside, closing it behind her with a decisive click. "We need to talk," Lydia said. "Seems to be a popular phrase tonight. I'm serious." Lydia moved to the center of the small room, her presence filling it like perfume, expensive and overwhelming. "You're becoming a problem. I'm keeping you alive. You're making Cade weak." Lydia's voice was ice. "He second-guesses every decision now because he's afraid of being wrong about you again. The pack sees it. They're losing faith in him. That's not my fault. Isn't it?" Lydia stepped closer. "You came back here for revenge. Don't pretend otherwise. You want him to suffer for rejecting you? Want all of us to feel what it's like to need someone we threw away? Well, congratulations. You're succeeding, but you're tearing the pack apart in the process." Aria met her eyes. "What do you want, Lydia?" "I want you to leave. After this crisis is over, after the Shadow Wolves are dealt with, I want you gone, permanently. And if I refuse, then I'll make sure Cade understands exactly what you are, a threat to pack stability, to his leadership, to everything we've built here." "You mean everything you want to build," Aria corrected. "This isn't about the pack. This is about you wanting to be Luna and me being in the way." Lydia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I was born for this position, trained for it my entire life. You're just a rejected mate who got lucky with some weird power you don't even understand. When this is over, the pack will have to choose stable leadership or whatever chaos you represent. And they'll choose stability. They always do. We'll see." "Yes," Lydia agreed. "We will." She left, her footsteps precise on the wooden floor. Aria waited until she was gone, then punched the wall hard enough to crack it. Pain exploded through her knuckles. She welcomed it. Pain was clean, simple, honest, not like the tangled mess of emotions that came with being back here, being needed and hated in equal measure. She was examining her split knuckles, already healing, of course, when another knock came. "I swear to—" she started, then stopped. The person at the door wasn't Cade or Lydia or any of the pack. It was a girl, maybe 17, with dark hair and frightened eyes. One of the civilians Aria had saved from the Shadow Wolf earlier. "I'm sorry to bother you," the girl said quietly. I wanted to say thank you for saving me and my mom and my brother. We'd be dead if you hadn't come." Aria didn't know what to say to that. Gratitude wasn't something she'd expected to find here. "You're welcome," she finally managed. The girl nodded and started to leave, then turned back. "I heard what Lydia said about you being a problem. She's wrong. You're not a problem. You're a miracle." She left before Aria could respond. Aria stood in the doorway, watching her go, feeling something crack open in her chest that she'd been trying very hard to keep sealed. The next day brought more attacks. Not shadow wolves, something worse. Pack members started getting sick. It began with the warriors who'd been bitten during the fight, then spread to anyone who'd been near them. High fever, delirium, wounds that wouldn't heal. Ruth worked herself to exhaustion trying to treat them, but nothing helped. By midday, 3 more had died. Aria watched from the training yard as they carried out the bodies. The shadow wolves were attacking without even being present, using their venom to destroy the pack from within. "We need to quarantine the infected," Marcus was saying to Cade. "Lock them down before the sickness spreads further." "We're not locking up our own people," Cade snapped. "Then the whole pack dies." They were standing near the central fire pit, voices rising. Warriors gathered around taking sides. The pack was fracturing. Aria walked over. "The sickness isn't natural. It's shadow corruption. The same thing that makes their flesh absorb light. It gets into your blood through their bites and teeth." "Can you cure it?" Cade asked. "I don't know, but I can try." Ruth appeared from the healer's cabin, looking decades older than she had yesterday. "If you're going to try something, try it fast. We're losing 2 more by sundown." Aria followed her inside. The cabin had been converted into a makeshift hospital, cots lined up wall to wall with sick warriors. The smell of fever and rot was overwhelming. She moved to the first cot. The warrior lying there, Garrett, the one she'd thrown during training, was barely conscious, his skin gray and slick with sweat. "This is going to hurt," Aria warned him. She placed her hand on his chest and reached for that power in her blood. It responded immediately, flooding down her arm and into Garrett's body. She could feel the shadow corruption inside him, cold spots in his blood that spread like ink in water. She pushed her power against it. The corruption pushed back. Garrett screamed. Aria held on, gritting her teeth as pain lanced through her own body. The corruption was fighting her, trying to spread into her through the connection. She could feel it trying to take root in her veins, cold and hungry. She pushed harder. Her vision whited out. Somewhere far away she heard Ruth shouting, felt hands trying to pull her back. Then the corruption broke. Shattered. Dissolved. Aria fell backward, gasping. Garrett lay still on the cot, his breathing ragged but steady. The gray pallor was already fading from his skin. "It worked," Ruth breathed. "You actually cured him." Aria struggled to sit up. Her whole body felt like it had been dipped in ice water. "How many more?" 12. "But if it's that hard every time, I'll manage. Get me to the next one." She worked through them methodically, one after another. Each healing took something from her. Energy, strength, pieces of herself that she wasn't sure would grow back. By the 8th patient, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely maintain contact. By the 11th, blood was running from her nose. The 12th patient was a woman named Sarah, who'd fought beside her during the battle. Aria placed her hands on Sarah's chest and reached for her power one more time. Nothing happened. She tried again, digging deeper. The power was still there, but it wouldn't respond, wouldn't flow. She'd used too much, pushed too hard. "I can't," she whispered. "I don't have enough left." Ruth put a hand on her shoulder. "You saved 11. That's more than anyone else could have done." But it wasn't enough. Aria watched Sarah's chest rise and fall in labored breaths and felt the failure like a physical weight. She stumbled out of the cabin into afternoon light that felt too bright, too harsh. The courtyard spun. She made it 3 steps before her legs gave out. Someone caught her before she hit the ground. She looked up and saw Cade's face, concern etched deep in the lines around his eyes. "You pushed too hard," he said. "Had to. They were dying. And now you're dying." He lifted her easily. When had she gotten so light? And carried her toward her cabin. "You can't save everyone, Aria. Watch me." He laid her on the cot and stepped back, studying her. "Why do you do this? Push yourself past breaking for a pack that rejected you." Aria closed her eyes. "Because someone has to. And apparently I'm the only one who can." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." She heard him sigh, heard his footsteps move toward the door. Then they stopped. "For what it's worth," Cade said quietly, "I'm sorry. For all of it. The rejection, the cruelty, not seeing what you were. If I could take it back—" "But you can't," Aria interrupted, "so apologies don't mean much." He left. She lay on the cot and let exhaustion pull her under. She dreamed of darkness and teeth and eyes like frozen stars. When she woke, it was night. Full night, moonless and thick. She sat up too fast and the room spun. Outside, someone was screaming. Aria forced herself upright and stumbled to the door. The compound was chaos, shadow wolves everywhere, dozens of them, flowing over walls and through gates like a tide of darkness. They'd come. The full force, just like she'd predicted. She grabbed her weapons, borrowed knives, a sword someone had left by her door, and ran out into the battle. It was worse than the first night. So much worse. The shadow wolves moved in coordinated packs, separating warriors from each other, targeting the weakest first. Fire barely slowed them down. They'd learned, adapted. Aria killed 3 in the first minute, but for every one she destroyed, 2 more appeared. The courtyard was a nightmare of shadow and flame, screaming and dying. She saw Cade fighting near the main hall, his spear wreathed in fire. Saw Marcus go down under 2 wolves. Saw Lydia drag him away. Saw the young girl who'd thanked her yesterday get torn apart before anyone could reach her. Something inside Aria snapped. Power erupted from her like a shockwave. Every shadow wolf within 20 feet dissolved into ash. The ones farther out recoiled, circling but not attacking. Aria stood in the center of the courtyard, power crackling around her like lightning. She could feel it burning through her veins, consuming her from the inside just like Mira had warned. She didn't care. "Come on!" she screamed at the circling wolves. "You want to kill us? Come through me first!" They came, all of them at once. a wave of darkness and teeth. Aria met them head on, that terrible power turning her into something that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite wolf, wasn't quite anything the world had a name for. She killed and killed and killed, lost count of the bodies, lost track of time, lost everything except the pure animal need to survive, to protect, to prove she was strong enough to matter. When it finally ended, she was standing alone in a circle of ash. The shadow wolves that weren't dead had fled. The pack warriors stared at her in absolute silence. Aria looked down at her hands. They were covered in black blood and shadow residue, shaking uncontrollably. The power that had burned so bright was guttering now, leaving her hollow. Then she felt it, a presence behind her, massive and ancient. She turned slowly. The biggest shadow wolf she'd seen yet stood at the courtyard's edge. It was easily twice the size of the others, with eyes that burned like suns instead of stars. A leader, an alpha. It looked at her, and Aria felt something pass between them. Recognition, understanding. This was what she was becoming. This was the other side of her bloodline, the thing that made her different from pack wolves, that gave her power over shadow and darkness. She was part shadow wolf. The revelation hit like a physical blow. All the pieces fell into place. Why physical weapons passed through her targets until she learned to solidify them. Why she healed so fast. Why the shadow corruption couldn't take root in her blood. Her grandfather hadn't been human. He'd been one of these things, wearing a human face. The alpha shadow wolf tilted its head, still watching her. Then it did something impossible. It spoke. The words came out like grinding stone, like wind through empty places, but they were clear. "Come home, daughter. Stop fighting your nature." "I'm not," Aria started. "You are. Half-blood, but blood nonetheless. This pack will never accept what you are. We will." The alpha's eyes burned brighter. "Join us. Become what you were meant to be." Every warrior in the courtyard was watching, waiting to see what she'd choose. Aria looked at Cade, at Marcus, at Ruth, and Lydia, and all the faces she'd known her entire life. Then she looked at the Shadow Alpha, at the power it represented, at the belonging it offered. "No," she said. The Alpha's ears flattened. "You choose them? After they cast you out? After they called you weak?" "I choose myself." Aria's voice strengthened. "I'm not pack. I'm not shadow. I'm whatever the hell I decide to be, and right now, I decide these people live." The Alpha stared at her for a long moment. Then it laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "So be it. But you can't protect them forever, Half-Blood. Eventually, you'll have to choose a side, and when that day comes, we'll be waiting." It turned and flowed back into the forest, taking the remaining shadow wolves with it. Silence fell over the compound. Aria stood in her circle of ash and felt 300 pairs of eyes on her back. She turned slowly to face the pack. Cade was the first to speak. "Is it true? Are you one of them?" "Half," Aria said. "My grandfather wasn't human. He was Shadow Wolf, which means I'm both. And neither." "That's impossible," Lydia breathed. "Shadow wolves and pack wolves can't." "Apparently they can." Aria looked at her burned hands, at the shadow residue that clung to her skin like a second layer. "My whole life I thought I was weak because my wolf barely showed. Turns out I was looking for the wrong thing. The power was always there, just not the kind anyone expected." "This changes everything," Marcus said. "Yeah," Aria met Cade's eyes. "So here's the deal. I just saved your pack. Again. Killed more shadow wolves in one night than your entire warrior course could handle. And I did it knowing what I am, knowing I could have just joined them and let you all die. I chose you anyway. So the question is, what are you going to choose?" The pack murmured, voices overlapping. Aria could hear the fear, the uncertainty, the revulsion. She'd just confirmed their worst suspicions. She was other, was monster, was exactly the kind of thing they'd spent generations learning to hunt. Cade looked around at his pack, at the destruction, at the bodies, at Aria standing alone in her circle of ash. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He knelt. "I choose to honor the warrior who saved us," he said clearly, "who came back when she had every reason to let us burn, who fought for us even knowing we'd fear what she is." He looked up at Aria. "You're right. You're not pack. You're something else. Something stronger, and if you'll have us, we'd be honored to stand with you. Marcus knelt next. Then Ruth. Then, one by one, the warriors followed. Lydia was the last to kneel, her face a mask of fury and forced respect. Aria looked at them all, at an entire pack on their knees before the girl they'd thrown away, and felt something she'd thought was dead flicker back to life in her chest. Not forgiveness, not trust, but possibility. Get up, she said. All of you. I didn't save you so you could kneel. I saved you because it was right. Because people were dying, and I could stop it. She walked toward Cade, helped him to his feet. But I'm done being treated like I'm less. Done apologizing for what I am. From now on, we're equals. Agreed? Cade nodded slowly. Agreed. Aria turned to address the whole pack. The Shadow Wolves will be back. Their alpha said as much. But now they know what I am, what I can do. They won't attack blindly again. Next time they come, it'll be to finish this, to kill me and take the pack. Then what do we do? Someone called out. Aria smiled, and it wasn't entirely human. We stop running, stop defending. We take the fight to them, find their den, their pack, and we end this before they can regroup. That's suicide, Lydia said. We don't know where they nest. We don't know how many there are. Then it's a good thing I can find them. Aria held up her shadow-stained hands. This blood calls to theirs. I can track them. And when we find them, I can kill them. All of them. When? Marcus asked. Dawn. We move at dawn. Aria looked at the sky, at stars starting to fade toward morning. Get whatever rest you can. Arm yourselves with fire and steel, and prepare to fight like you've never fought before, because we're going into their territory, and only one pack is coming back out. The crowd dispersed slowly, voices low and uncertain. Cade lingered. You're really going to do this, he said. You have a better idea? No. But leading a suicide mission into Shadow Wolf territory with warriors who are half dead already, that's not strategy. That's desperation. Maybe. Aria started walking toward her cabin. But desperation's kept me alive this long. Might as well see where it takes me. Aria, wait. Cade caught up to her. That thing the Alpha said. About choosing sides. If it comes down to it, if you have to choose between us and them, I already chose. She stopped at her door. I chose me. Everything else is just details. She went inside and shut the door before he could argue. Alone in the dark, Aria finally let herself shake. Let the terror and exhaustion and reality of what she'd learned catch up to her. She was half Shadow Wolf, part monster, the thing her people had feared and hunted for generations. And tomorrow she was going to lead them straight into the heart of darkness. She lay down on the cot and stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until dawn, wondering if she'd just condemned them all to death. Outside, the night pressed close and hungry, full of eyes that watched and waited for her next mistake. Dawn came too fast and not fast enough. Aria stood at the compound gate, watching the sky bleed from black to gray to the pale gold of early morning. Behind her, 20 warriors prepared for what might be their last mission, checking weapons, tightening armor straps, saying quiet goodbyes to people they might never see again. She'd slept maybe an hour. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that shadow Alpha staring at her, heard its voice grinding out words that felt like prophecy. Eventually, you'll have to choose a side. Ready? Cade appeared at her shoulder, fully armed with fire-wrapped spears strapped to his back and determination carved into his face. No, Aria said honestly, but we're going anyway. Marcus joined them, looking haggard. He'd spent the night organizing defenses for those staying behind, the wounded, the young, the civilians who couldn't fight. The perimeter's as secure as we can make it. If the Shadow Wolves circle back while we're gone, they won't. Aria touched the shadow residue still clinging to her hands. She'd tried washing it off, and it had just sunk deeper into her skin. They'll be at their den, waiting. They know I'm coming. How can you be sure? Because that's what I'd do. She turned to face the assembled warriors. Most of them wouldn't meet her eyes, still afraid of what she was, what she'd revealed. Only a handful looked at her directly. Garrett, who she'd healed. Ruth, who'd bandaged her more times than she could count. And Cade, whose expression was unreadable. Lydia stood at the back, arms crossed, radiating disapproval. Listen up, Aria called out. We're tracking them to their nest. It'll be in the darkest part of the forest, somewhere light doesn't reach easily, probably underground or in deep caves. When we find it, we go in fast and we don't stop until every shadow wolf is ash. No mercy, no hesitation. They're not pack. They're predators. Treat them like the monsters they are. Even though you're half one of them, Lydia's voice cut across the courtyard. Silence fell. Aria met her gaze steadily, especially because I'm half one of them. I know how they think, how they hunt, how they'll try to separate us and pick us off one by one. She paused. And I know their weakness. Which is? Marcus asked. Me. Aria smiled without humor. They want me alive, want me to join them, which means they'll focus on capturing me instead of killing you. That gives you openings. Use them. You're bait, Cade said flatly. I'm the weapon, the bait, the entire strategy. Aria grabbed her pack. Now let's move before I change my mind about this stupid plan. They filed out of the compound in formation, Aria at the front, Cade and Marcus flanking her, the others in a defensive cluster behind. The forest swallowed them immediately, pine trees blocking out most of the new sunlight. Aria closed her eyes and reached for that connection in her blood, the part that called to shadow. It responded like a compass needle finding north, tugging her northwest towards something dark and old. This way, she said, and started walking. The forest changed as they traveled deeper. The trees grew twisted, their bark blackened like they'd survived fire. Undergrowth died away until they were walking on bare earth that felt cold even through boot leather. No birds sang, no small animals rustled in the bushes. This place feels wrong, Garrett muttered. He was carrying a sword wrapped in oil-soaked cloth, ready to light at the first sign of danger. That's because it is wrong, Ruth said. She'd insisted on coming despite her age, claiming they'd need a healer. Now she studied the dead forest with practiced eyes. Shadow corruption. It's in the soil, the trees, everything. Whatever's at the center of this has been here a long time. They walked for 3 hours. The sun rose, but the forest stayed dim, light filtering through the canopy in sickly green-tinged shafts. Aria's connection to the shadow wolves grew stronger with each step, pulling her forward like a fish on a line. Then Lydia grabbed her arm. Stop. Aria froze. What? Look. Lydia pointed at the ground ahead. Bones. Hundreds of them, scattered across the forest floor in patterns that might have been random or might have been deliberate. Animal bones mostly, but Aria spotted a few that were definitely human, or wolf. We're close, she whispered. How close? Cade asked. Before Aria could answer, the forest around them erupted with movement. Shadow wolves poured from between trees, from behind rocks, from places that shouldn't have been able to hide anything. 10. 15, 20 of them, surrounding the group in a perfect circle. The warriors formed up back to back, weapons raised, fire sparked to life on blades and spear tips. But the shadow wolves didn't attack, they just circled, watching with those star-bright eyes. Then the circle parted and the alpha walked through. In daylight, what little there was, it looked even more massive. Its shadow flesh rippled like water, absorbing the sickly light, those sun-bright eyes fixed on Aria. You came, it said in that grinding stone voice. I wondered if you would. Didn't have much choice, Aria said. You were going to kill them all eventually. Yes. The alpha tilted its head. But you could have run, could have left them to their fate. Instead, you bring them to me. Why? To end this, one way or another. The alpha laughed, that sound like breaking ice. You think you can win? 21 wolves against my pack? It gestured with one massive paw. More shadow wolves emerged from the forest. 30, 40, 50 of them, until the trees themselves seemed made of living darkness. Aria's heart sank. They were outnumbered at least 3 to 1. Last chance, daughter, the alpha said. Join us. Embrace what you are. Your pack fears you. I can smell it on them. But we would welcome you. Teach you to use that power burning in your blood. Make you stronger than any alpha, any pack leader. You could rule forests, territories, entire regions. Aria felt that pull again, stronger now. The temptation to say yes, to stop fighting what she was, to let the shadow half take over and never feel weak or rejected again. She looked at Cade, at the warriors who'd knelt before her just hours ago, at Lydia, whose face showed naked hope that Aria would betray them. "No," Aria said again. "I told you, I choose myself. And right now, myself chooses to burn every single one of you into ash." The Alpha's eyes flared brighter. "So be it. Take her alive. Kill the rest." The Shadow Wolves attacked. Chaos erupted. Warriors fought desperately, fire weapons cutting through shadow flesh when they connected. But there were too many wolves, moving too fast. Aria saw Garrett go down under two of them, saw Ruth barely dodge claws aimed at her throat. Aria threw herself into the fight. That power in her blood surged up, hot and violent, turning her into something halfway between wolf and shadow. She killed 3 shadow wolves in the first 10 seconds, her hands tearing through their flesh like it was tissue paper. But for every one she killed, 2 more took its place. They were learning her patterns, adapting, and they were trying to separate her from the pack warriors, to isolate her. Cade fought his way to her side, spear blazing. "We can't hold this." "I know." Aria grabbed a shadow wolf mid-leap and slammed it into the ground hard enough to crater the earth. "We need to get to their den. That's where the Alpha will retreat when things go bad. Things are already bad." A shadow wolf crashed into Cade from the side, knocking his spear away. Its jaws closed on his arm, and he screamed. Aria was there in an instant, ripping the wolf off him and breaking its spine with her bare hands. "Go!" she shouted at the pack warriors. "Follow the bone path. It leads to their nest. I'll hold them here." "That's suicide," Marcus yelled. "It's the only chance you've got. Move!" Marcus hesitated 1 second, then started shouting orders. The pack warriors formed a wedge and charged through the shadow wolf line, fighting toward a gap in the trees where bones lay thick on the ground. The shadow wolves tried to stop them. Aria made sure they couldn't. She threw herself into the mass of darkness, becoming a whirlwind of violence. Claws raked her sides, teeth tore her shoulder, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The power in her blood was fully unleashed now, burning through her like wildfire. She was dimly aware of the pack warriors disappearing into the trees, aware of the Shadow Alpha watching her with those burning eyes, aware that she was surrounded by 50 shadow wolves and completely alone. The Alpha raised one paw. The shadow wolves stopped attacking, formed a circle around Aria. She stood in the center, bleeding from a dozen wounds, breathing hard. "Impressive," the Alpha said. "You fight like one of us. Move like one of us. Perhaps there is more shadow in you than I thought. Shut up and fight me yourself," Aria spat blood. "Or are you scared?" The Alpha's eyes narrowed. Then it charged. Fast. Impossibly fast for something that size. Aria barely got her arms up before it hit her like a freight train, driving her backward into a tree. The impact cracked the trunk. Air exploded from her lungs. The Alpha's jaws closed around her throat, not biting, just holding. A warning. "You could have been great," it said softly. "Could have been legend. But you chose weakness. Chose them over your own blood." Aria grabbed the Alpha's jaws with both hands and pushed. Her muscles screamed. The Alpha's teeth dug into her palms, drawing blood, but she pushed harder, drawing on every ounce of that strange power, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, forced the jaws open. She drove her knee up into the Alpha's chest. It grunted and released her, staggering back. "I chose strength," Aria gasped. "Real strength. Not the kind that comes from fear and killing, the kind that comes from protecting people weaker than you." "Sentiment," the Alpha snarled. "It will be your death." They clashed again. Aria had fought shadow wolves before, but the Alpha was different, bigger, faster, stronger. Each blow felt like being hit with a sledgehammer. She gave as good as she got, her fists and feet connecting with shadow flesh that was somehow more solid than the others. Around them, the other shadow wolves watched in silence. This was a challenge fight now, Alpha to Alpha. Aria felt something shift inside her during the fight. The shadow half of her blood was rising, responding to the Alpha's presence. It whispered promises. "Give in. Let me take over. Together we could win this." She pushed it down, locked it away. She'd spent 4 weeks learning to control this power. She wasn't about to lose that control now. The Alpha lunged again. This time Aria was ready. She sidestepped and drove her hand into its chest, fingers punching through shadow flesh to find what passed for a heart. The Alpha roared. Aria twisted her hand and felt something tear. The Alpha staggered. Its shadow flesh flickered, solid becoming smoke, becoming solid again. "You're dying," Aria said quietly. That's why you're so desperate to recruit me. You're old, ancient, and you know your time's running out. The Alpha's eyes dimmed slightly. We are the last. The final pack of our kind. When I fall, there will be no more shadow wolves in this world. Good. You say that now. The Alpha's voice was weakening. But you carry our blood, our legacy. Even if you reject it, it will call to you. In dark moments, in desperate times, you will feel us, and you will wonder what you could have become. Aria pulled her hand free. The Alpha collapsed, its massive form shrinking, shadow flesh dissolving. Maybe, she admitted, but I'll still choose them over you, every single time. The Alpha looked at her one last time. Something like respect flickered in its dying eyes. Then perhaps there is hope for both our kinds. It died. Its body dissolved into shadow smoke that dissipated on the wind, leaving nothing behind but a faint scorch mark on the ground. The surrounding shadow wolves stared at Aria. Without their Alpha, they looked lost, confused. Then one by one, they bowed their heads. Aria stood frozen. They were submitting to her? No, she said firmly. I'm not your Alpha. I'm not your anything. The largest of the remaining shadow wolves, maybe half the size of the dead Alpha, stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was younger, clearer than the Alpha's grinding tones. You have defeated our leader. By right of combat, you lead the pack. I don't want to lead you, but you must. Without an Alpha, we will go mad, become true monsters, killing without purpose or control. Is that what you want? Aria's mind raced. She could kill them all right now. They were submissive, vulnerable. It would be easy, but they were also the last of their kind. And despite everything, despite the deaths they'd caused, part of her understood them. They were survivors, just like her, outcasts with nowhere else to go. If I lead you, she said slowly, you follow my rules. No hunting pack wolves, no killing humans. You live in the deep forest and you stay away from civilization. The shadow wolves conferred among themselves in growls and whispers. Agreed, the large one finally said. We will follow, but we will also wait. When you fully accept what you are, when the shadow blood consumes you completely, you will return to us, and we will be ready. Don't hold your breath. A commotion from the direction the pack warriors had gone made Aria turn. They were returning, led by Cade. His face was covered in soot and blood, but he was grinning. We found the den, he called out. Cleared it. There were maybe 15 more in there. We got them all. Then he saw Aria surrounded by shadow wolves, and his hand went to his weapon. What? It's fine, Aria said quickly. Their Alpha's dead. These ones are surrendering. Surrendering? Lydia pushed forward, looking between Aria and the shadow wolves with naked suspicion. Shadow wolves don't surrender. They do when you kill their leader and become the new Alpha by right of combat. Aria said it casually, but the words landed like bombs. The pack warriors stared. You're their Alpha now? Marcus asked slowly. Technically, but I'm sending them back to the deep forest. They won't bother you again. She turned to the shadow wolves. Go, now, before I change my mind. The shadow wolves bowed once more, then melted into the forest like smoke. Within seconds they were gone, leaving no trace they'd ever existed. Silence fell over the clearing. Did that just happen? Garrett asked no one in particular. We won, Ruth said, sounding dazed. We actually won. A cheer went up from the warriors. They'd lost 2 in the fighting, painful, but far better than the slaughter everyone had expected. They'd destroyed the Shadow Wolf Den, killed their Alpha, and scattered the survivors. Against all odds, they'd survived. Cade walked over to Aria. His expression was complicated, relief and fear, and something that might have been awe all tangled together. You killed an Alpha Shadow Wolf, he said. Yeah. With your bare hands. Yeah. And now you're technically the Alpha of their pack. Technically. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked her. He laughed. Not a small laugh, but a real one. Full-bodied and genuine. What's so funny? Aria demanded. I rejected you as too weak to be my mate. And now you're more powerful than any Alpha I've ever heard of, leading 2 packs at once. He shook his head. I'm an idiot. Yeah, Aria agreed. You really are. The pack warriors were gathering around now, looking at her with new eyes. Not fear this time. Something else. Something that looked almost like reverence. "All hail Aria Thorn," Garrett suddenly called out. "Alpha of Shadows, savior of Ironwood." "Don't," Aria started, but others took up the cry. "Alpha of Shadows, savior of Ironwood." The chant grew until the whole forest rang with it. Aria stood in the center, uncomfortable with the attention, with the titles, with all of it. But she couldn't deny the small flame of satisfaction burning in her chest. The pack that had rejected her was now chanting her name. The alpha who'd thrown her away was standing before her with respect in his eyes. She'd proven her point, proven she was strong, proven she mattered. Lydia pushed through the crowd, her face carefully neutral. "We should head back, tend the wounded, make sure the compound is secure." "Agreed," Cade said. He turned to Aria. Are you coming back with us?" It was the question Aria had been avoiding. She'd completed her mission, saved the pack, proven herself. She could walk away now, leave them behind forever, find some new life somewhere else. But as she looked at their faces, at Garrett, who she'd trained, Ruth, who'd healed her, even Lydia, who hated her, she realized something had changed. Not in them, in her. She didn't want to leave. "For now," she said carefully. "But things are different. I'm not pack. I'm not shadow. I'm something else. And that means I make my own rules." "Fair enough," Cade said. "What rules?" Aria thought about it. About everything she'd learned in the fringe, everything she'd become since rejection. No one gets thrown away for being different. No one gets rejected for being weak. Strength comes in different forms, and we value all of them. She met Cade's eyes. And alphas who abuse their power answer to someone stronger. It was a direct challenge. The pack held its breath. Cade looked at her for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. "Deal. Partners?" Aria looked at his offered hand. The same hand that had rejected her 5 weeks ago. The same hand that had condemned her to death in the wilderness. She took it. "Partners," she agreed, "but equals, not alpha and mate, not superior and subordinate. Equals." "Equals," Cade agreed. Their hands clasped, and Aria felt something settle into place. Not the mate bond. That was still broken, still scarred beyond repair. But something new. Something built on respect instead of destiny, on choice instead of fate. The pack cheered again. This time, Aria let herself smile. They started the long walk back to the compound. Aria fell into step beside Cade, with Marcus and Ruth flanking them. The other warriors spread out in a protective formation, but the tension was different now. Less fear, more curiosity. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "We've got a half-shadow wolf as our, what, co-alpha? Guardian? Weapon?" "I'm whatever I need to be," Aria said. "Right now I'm tired and hungry and really looking forward to a hot bath." Ruth laughed. "First sensible thing anyone said all day." They walked in companionable silence for a while. The forest gradually lightened as they left the corrupted zone behind, trees returning to normal, birds starting to sing again. "You know people are going to talk," Lydia said from behind them. She'd been quiet since the clearing. "About what you are, about what you can do. Word will spread." "Let it spread," Aria said. "Maybe other packs will think twice before throwing away their weak members. Maybe they'll realize strength isn't just about claws and teeth. Or maybe they'll come hunting you," Lydia countered. "See you as a threat, an abomination." "Then they can try," Aria looked back at her. "I've survived worse than pack politics. I think I'll manage." Lydia's eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue further. They reached the compound as the sun hit its peak. The gates opened and civilians poured out, crying and cheering when they saw the warriors returning alive. Aria hung back, letting the pack have their reunion moment. But then the young girl from before, the one she'd saved, ran up and threw her arms around Aria's waist. "You came back," she said, squeezing tight. Aria stood frozen, unsure how to respond. Finally, she awkwardly patted the girl's head. "Yeah, I came back. Thank you for saving us, for saving everyone." The girl's mother appeared and pulled her daughter back, but she smiled at Aria. "We owe you everything." Others started approaching then. Not all of them. Some still kept their distance, still afraid. But enough. Enough to show that something fundamental had shifted. Aria had gone from rejected outcast to savior, from weakness to weapon, from nothing to necessary. She'd proven every single person who doubted her wrong. That night, the pack held a feast. Not formal like the ceremonies Aria remembered, just people gathering in the main hall, sharing food and stories, celebrating survival. Aria sat at one of the long tables, Ruth on one side and Garrett on the other, listening to warriors exaggerate their parts in the battle. Cade stood and called for quiet. The hall settled. "Today we won a fight that should have killed us," he said. "We faced an enemy stronger and older than ourselves, and we survived. That victory belongs to all of us. Every warrior who fought, every civilian who held the compound, every person who refused to give up." Cheers erupted. Cade waited for them to quiet. "But if we're being honest, it belongs mostly to one person. Someone I wronged. Someone I underestimated so badly, it nearly cost us everything." He turned to look at Aria. "Aria Thorn, you came back when you had every reason to let us burn. You fought for us when we didn't deserve it. You saved us when our own alpha couldn't." The hall went quiet. Aria felt every eye on her. "I can't undo the rejection," Cade continued. "Can't take back the pain I caused. But I can do this." He pulled something from his pocket, a silver chain with a wolf pendant, the mark of pack leadership. "This is the symbol of an alpha. I offer it to you now, not as a mate, but as an equal, as someone who's earned the right to lead alongside me." Aria stared at the pendant. It caught the firelight, throwing sparks across the table. "I don't want to be alpha," she said quietly. Murmurs rippled through the hall. "I don't want your titles or your symbols or your hierarchy," Aria continued, standing. "I don't want to rule or command or any of it. I just want to be seen, to be valued, to have a place where I belong without having to prove myself every single day." She walked toward Cade, stopped in front of him. "So here's my counteroffer. You keep your alpha position, run the pack, make the decisions, but you make me your enforcer, your weapon, the person you call when normal pack strength isn't enough. I'll protect Ironwood, fight for it, bleed for it, but on my terms, as myself, not as what anyone else thinks I should be." Cade looked at the pendant in his hand, then at Aria. "Deal," he said. Then he smiled. "Though I think you underestimate how much I'd rather have you in charge. I really don't." The hall laughed, the tension breaking. Cade put the pendant away and extended his hand again. They shook, and this time it felt final. Settled. The feast continued late into the night. Aria found herself relaxing, actually enjoying the company, the warmth, the sense of belonging she'd been missing since rejection. Lydia appeared at her elbow as things were winding down. "You played that well," she said quietly. "Turned down the alpha position but secured even more power. Smart." "It wasn't strategy," Aria said. "I genuinely don't want to lead." "Maybe, or maybe you're smarter than you look." Lydia studied her. "I still don't trust you, still think you're dangerous. But I can work with dangerous. Weak I couldn't work with, so welcome back, I guess." It wasn't friendship, wasn't even really acceptance, but it was something. "Thanks," Aria said. "I think." Lydia walked away. Aria watched her go, then turned to find Cade standing nearby. "Walk with me?" he asked. They left the hall and walked out into the compound. The night was clear, stars bright overhead. Aria could feel the shadow wolves in the distant forest, a awareness at the edge of her consciousness, like radio static. They were out there, waiting, but not threatening. "I meant what I said," Cade said after a while. "About being wrong, about underestimating you." "I know. I don't expect forgiveness, don't even think I deserve it. But I want you to know that I see you now, see what you are, what you're capable of. And I'm in awe, honestly." Aria looked at him. In the starlight, he looked different, less like the untouchable alpha, more like a man who'd made mistakes and was trying to fix them. "I'm not the same girl you rejected," she said. "That girl died in the forest. What came back is harder, colder, more willing to hurt people who deserve it." "I know. But she's also stronger, braver, more sure of who she is and what she wants." "I know that too." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars. "The mate bond is broken," Aria finally said. It's not coming back, you know that, right? Yeah. Cade's voice was quiet. I know. But maybe we can build something else. Something better. Not based on destiny or biology, just two people who choose to work together. Cade looked at her, hope flickering in his eyes. I'd like that. Don't get ahead of yourself, Aria warned. I'm still angry, still hurt, still not sure I can fully trust you. This is going to take time. I've got time. Aria smiled despite herself. We'll see. They walked back toward the residential area. Aria's cabin was still there, still empty, still waiting. She stopped at the door. Good night, Cade. Good night, Aria. And thank you for everything. She went inside and shut the door. Alone in the dark, she finally let herself acknowledge the truth. She'd won. Won the battle. Won respect. Won a place where she belonged. The rejected mate had become the pack's salvation. And somewhere deep in the forest, shadow wolves stirred and waited, knowing that one day their half-blood alpha would need them again. But tonight, Aria Thorn slept peacefully for the first time in 5 weeks, surrounded by people who finally saw her worth. 3 months later, Aria stood at the eastern border of Ironwood territory and watched riders approach through morning mist. They came from Shadowfen Pack, Ironwood's oldest rivals. 5 wolves on horseback, carrying banners that snapped in the cold wind. At their center rode a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes like chips of ice. Alpha Morgana Shadowfen, ruler of the largest pack in the Northern Territories. Aria felt the pack warriors tense behind her. Cade stood at her right, Marcus at her left. 30 more warriors lined the border, weapons ready but not drawn. This was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting. Supposed to be. She brought a lot of muscle for a peace talk, Marcus muttered. So did we, Aria pointed out. She wore her enforcer leathers now, dark, reinforced with steel plates, marked with a silver wolf of ironwood. Cade had insisted on the uniform. She'd insisted on adding her own touches, shadow dark patterns that seemed to move in certain light, a reminder of what she was. The Shadowfen riders stopped 20 feet away. Alpha Morgana dismounted with fluid grace, her guards flanking her. She was in her 50s but moved like someone half that age, all coiled power and calculation. Alpha Cade, she said, voice carrying across the distance. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Alpha Morgana. Cade stepped forward. What brings Shadowfen to our borders? Morgana's eyes slid past him to Aria. I came to see if the rumors were true, and apparently they are. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The rejected mate who became more powerful than her alpha, the half-blood who commands shadows, the weapon that destroyed an entire shadow wolf pack single-handedly. I had help, Aria said flatly. Did you? The stories I've heard suggest otherwise. They say you killed 50 shadow wolves in one night, that you ripped their alpha apart with your bare hands, that you're now something between wolf and monster, neither and both. The Ironwood warriors bristled. Aria held up a hand to quiet them. Stories get exaggerated, she said. But yeah, I killed their alpha, sent the rest running. What's your point? Morgana studied her like she was examining a particularly interesting weapon. My point is that you've destabilized the entire Northern Territory. 3 other packs have sent scouts to investigate what happened here. 2 have approached me about forming an alliance against Ironwood, against you specifically. Let them come, Cade said. We've faced worse. Have you? Because from where I stand, you've got one incredibly powerful enforcer and a pack that's still recovering from near extinction. If the other territories decide you're a threat, if they unite against you, Morgana shrugged. You're strong, but you're not invincible. Aria felt anger rising. She'd saved Ironwood, rebuilt it from the ashes, spent 3 months training warriors and strengthening defenses. And now other packs wanted to destroy them because she was different? So why are you here? She asked. To threaten us? Join the others in their alliance? No. Morgana's expression shifted, became calculating. I'm here to offer you a different option. Join Shadowfen. Bring your power, your skills, your unique abilities to a pack that can actually protect you. Cade is a decent alpha, but Ironwood is small, isolated, vulnerable. Under my protection, you'd be safe, and in exchange, I'd have the most powerful enforcer in the Northern Territories. Silence fell. Aria could feel Cade's tension beside her, could see the Ironwood warriors exchanging worried glances. This was it, the test. Would she stay loyal to the pack that had rejected her, or would she take the better offer? That's a bold proposal, Aria said carefully. Walk away from the pack I just saved to join their rivals. It's a practical proposal. Sentiment is all well and good, but survival requires hard choices. You know that better than anyone. Aria thought about it, about the rejection, about dying in the forest, about everything she'd endured to prove herself worthy. About the fact that even now, 3 months later, some Ironwood wolves still looked at her with fear instead of respect. Morgana was right about one thing. This would be easier. No, Aria said. Morgana's eyebrows rose. No? I didn't survive rejection in the Fringe and Shadow Wolves just to run when things get complicated. Ironwood is my pack. Not because they deserve me, but because I chose them. And I don't abandon my choices. Even when those choices might get you killed, especially then. Aria stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Here's what's going to happen, Alpha Morgana. You're going to go back to those other packs and tell them that if they come for Ironwood, they come for me. And I'm not just some enforcer they can overwhelm with numbers. I'm something new, something they've never fought before. And I will burn anyone who threatens my pack into ash. Morgana held her gaze for a long moment. Then she laughed, genuine amusement lighting her cold eyes. You know what? I believe you. She glanced at Cade. You're luckier than you deserve, Blackwater. If I'd found her first before you were stupid enough to reject her, she'd be mine now. But you didn't, Cade said quietly. And she's not. Indeed, Morgana remounted her horse. I'll deliver your message, but don't expect it to stop what's coming. Fear makes people do stupid things. And you, Aria Thorn, terrify a lot of very stupid people. She wheeled her horse and rode away, her guards following. The Ironwood warriors held position until the Shadowfen group disappeared into the mist. Then Cade turned to Aria. You just declared war on half the Northern Territories. Yeah, probably. Aria watched the mist swallow the riders. You mad about it? Mad? No. Terrified? Absolutely. But he was smiling. Though I have to admit, watching you face down Morgana Shadowfen without flinching was impressive. She was testing me, seeing if I'd break or run. I'm done with both. They walked back toward the compound, warriors falling into formation around them. Marcus caught up, his expression troubled. We need to start preparing for a real war, he said. Multiple packs, coordinated attacks. This isn't like the Shadow Wolves. These are trained warriors with tactics and resources. I know, Aria said, which is why we're not fighting them. Both men stopped. What? Cade asked. We're not fighting them, Aria repeated. We're going to make them not want to fight us. How? Aria smiled. By showing them exactly what I am and making it clear that attacking Ironwood means facing something worse than any pack war. We need a demonstration, something public, something that gets talked about. Over the next 2 weeks, Aria put her plan into motion. She sent messages to every major pack in the Northern Territories. Ironwood was hosting a gathering, a festival, a celebration of their victory over the Shadow Wolves, open to all packs who wanted to attend. Most thought it was insane. You didn't invite your enemies to a party, but Aria was counting on curiosity and fear to bring them anyway. The gathering was set for the full moon. Ironwood compound transformed into a festival ground with pavilions for food and drink, areas for demonstrations and contests, and a central arena for the main event. Packs came. Not all of them, but enough. Representatives from 6 different territories, including Shadowfen. They came armed, wary, expecting a trap. Instead, they found hospitality. Food, drink, entertainment. Ironwood warriors mixing with visitors, sharing stories, building connections. It was strange and uncomfortable and exactly what Aria wanted, confusion instead of hostility. The main event came at midnight, when the moon hung full and bright overhead. Aria stood in the central arena, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows. 300 wolves from different packs surrounded the arena, watching with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Cade stood at the arena's edge and raised his voice to Carrie. Thank you all for coming. We invited you here tonight to address the rumors, the fear, the questions about what happened to Ironwood, about what Aria Thorn is and what she can do. He gestured to her. Tonight, she's going to show you. Aria stepped into the arena's center. She'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this, working with the shadow wolves in the deep forest, learning to control the power she'd been fighting. Most of you know the story, she called out. Rejected mate, left to die, came back different, killed a shadow wolf alpha. She turned slowly, making eye contact with different pack representatives. But stories don't capture reality, so I'm going to give you reality. She closed her eyes and stopped fighting the shadow half of her blood. Let it rise. Let it flow through her veins like ice water, spreading from her core to her extremities. When she opened her eyes, they were glowing. Not the star bright of full shadow wolves, but something in between. Gold with threads of silver, wolf and shadow merged. The crowd murmured. Some stepped back. Aria raised her hands and shadow flesh bloomed from her skin, not consuming her, not transforming her completely, but covering her arms like living gloves. The same substance the shadow wolves were made of, but under her control. This is what I am, she said, voice carrying that resonant quality she'd learned from the shadow alpha. Not wolf, not shadow, both. I can move like them, fight like them, control darkness like they did, but I choose to use this power to protect instead of destroy. She demonstrated, moved across the arena faster than human eyes could track, leaving shadow trails in her wake. Shaped the darkness into weapons, blades, shields, forms that dissolved and reformed at will. Showed them strength that bent steel bars and speed that caught arrows mid-flight. The crowd watched in absolute silence. Then Aria let the shadow flesh recede. Her eyes faded back to normal. She stood in the arena's center, just a young woman again, breathing hard. This is my offer, she said. Leave Ironwood alone, and this power stays dormant. Attack us, and I become your worst nightmare. Not because I want to hurt you, but because I will protect my pack with everything I am. Every single thing. She looked directly at the Shadowfen delegation, at Morgana, who watched with calculating eyes. You can try to kill me. You can unite every pack in the north and come at us with everything you have. Maybe you'll even succeed. Aria smiled without humor, but I guarantee I'll take half of you with me, and the survivors will spend the rest of their lives wondering when I'll come back, because things like me don't stay dead easily. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then someone started clapping. Slow, deliberate. Aria tracked the sound to a man in the Shadowfen group, older, scarred, with the bearing of a seasoned warrior. That, he called out, is the most honest display of power I've ever seen. No posturing, no false humility, just, this is what I am, deal with it. He looked at Morgana. I vote we leave them alone. Morgana's lips twitched. Noted. Other packs started talking among themselves. The tension was breaking, shifting from hostility to wary respect. Alpha Morgana stood and walked to the arena's edge. You've made your point, Aria Thorn. You're dangerous, powerful, different. She paused. But you're also honest, and in a world full of alphas who lie about their strength, that's almost refreshing. So? Aria asked. So Shadowfen will honor Ironwood's borders, and I'll make it clear to the other territories that attacking you would be inadvisable. Morgana's smile was sharp. But if you ever change your mind about joining a stronger pack, my offer stands. Don't hold your breath. I rarely do. The gathering continued into the night, but the mood had shifted. What had started as tension evolved into cautious networking. Pack representatives who'd come expecting conflict found themselves sharing drinks and stories instead. Aria watched from the sidelines, exhausted from the demonstration. Ruth appeared with a cup of something warm and alcoholic. Drink, she ordered. You look ready to collapse. Feel ready to collapse. Aria took the cup gratefully. Did it work? Are they going to leave us alone? Most of them, the smart ones anyway. Ruth sat beside her. You gave them a choice. Fear you or respect you. Most will choose respect because it's easier. The ones who choose fear will stay away because fear makes people cautious. And the ones who are too stupid for either? Well, that's why you demonstrated exactly how badly attacking Ironwood would go for them. Ruth patted her shoulder. You did good, girl. Turned potential enemies into neutral parties. That's more than most alphas manage. Aria watched the crowd, saw Cade talking with the Shadowfen delegation, saw Marcus laughing with warriors from another pack. saw Lydia working the crowd with her perfect social skills. 3 months ago, they'd been on the edge of extinction. Now they were hosting a festival with their former enemies. Things are changing, Aria said quietly. They are, Ruth agreed, and you're the one changing them, whether you want to be or not. The gathering broke up near dawn. Packs departed with promises to stay in touch, to trade, to avoid conflict. It wasn't peace exactly, but it was something better than war. When the last visitors had gone, Aria found herself alone in the arena. The torches had burned down to embers. The moon was setting. Everything was quiet. She heard footsteps and turned to find Cade approaching. "Everyone's gone," he said. "It's just us now. How do you think it went?" "Honestly? Better than I could have hoped. You scared them, impressed them, and earned their respect in one demonstration. That's—" He shook his head. "That's what a true alpha does." "I'm not an alpha." "Aren't you? You lead the Shadow Wolves. You protect Ironwood. You just dictated terms to 6 different packs and they all accepted. What else would you call that?" Aria was quiet for a moment, watching the dying embers. "I'd call it survival. Everything I've done, it's all been about surviving. First the rejection, then the fringe, then the Shadow Wolves, and now this, surviving the political aftermath. It's more than survival," Cade said softly. "You're building something, a new way of leading, one that doesn't rely on traditional pack hierarchy or mate bonds or any of the old rules. You're showing everyone that strength comes in different forms." "Maybe," Aria turned to face him, "but I couldn't have done any of it if you hadn't rejected me." Cade flinched like she'd hit him. "Aria, I'm serious," she stepped closer. "If you'd accepted the bond, I'd be Luna now. Your mate, supporting your leadership, raising your children, playing the role I was born for. I'd be safe and comfortable and completely ignorant of what I really am. And instead, you went through hell. Instead, I became something hell couldn't break." Aria smiled. "So thank you for rejecting me, for forcing me to find my own strength, for giving me the worst thing that ever happened to me, because it turned into the best thing too." Cade looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. "I don't know if I should feel relieved or guilty. Feel both, I do." She paused. "But also feel proud. You made a mistake and you admitted it. You changed how you lead because you saw someone different being valuable. That takes courage too." They stood in the empty arena as the sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "What happens now?" Cade asked. "Now we rebuild. Make Ironwood stronger. Train more warriors. Build alliances." Aria stretched, feeling her muscles protest. "And I keep being the thing that scares people into behaving. It's not glamorous, but someone has to do it. You don't have to do it alone." "I know." She looked at him. "We're partners, remember? Equals. You handle the politics and pack management. I handle the threats and demonstrations of overwhelming force. It works." "It does," Cade agreed. "Better than I expected, honestly." They walked back toward the residential area together. The compound was stirring, warriors emerging for morning duties, civilians starting their day. Normal life resuming after the festival. Aria's cabin was still on the edge of the compound, still simple and small. But it was hers. Chosen, not assigned. A place she'd earned. She was about to go inside when she felt it, that shadow awareness at the edge of her consciousness. The Shadow Wolves in the deep forest were stirring, reaching out to their half-blood alpha. Aria closed her eyes and reached back, found their minds, their pack bond, the connection that tied her to them, whether she wanted it or not. "Stay in the deep forest," she sent to them. "Hunt animals, not people. Live quietly. And if I call, you come. Understood?" The response came back in feelings rather than words. "Understood. We wait. We watch. We protect our alpha's territory from the shadows." Aria opened her eyes and found Cade watching her with concern. "The Shadow Wolves?" he asked. "Just checking in. They're fine, staying where I told them to stay." She smiled. "Turns out being an alpha to monsters isn't that different from being an alpha to wolves. You just have to be clear about expectations. And they listen to you? For now. Until someone stronger comes along or I lose control of the power. Whichever happens first." She shrugged. "But that's a problem for future me. Present me needs sleep." Cade hesitated, then asked the question she could see he'd been holding back. The mate bond. Do you ever feel it trying to reform? Aria considered lying, considered saying no, that it was completely dead, that there was nothing between them but professional respect. Sometimes, she admitted, in quiet moments, when you do something that reminds me why I loved you in the first place. I feel this pull, like my wolf trying to reach across the broken bond and reconnect. What do you do? I remind myself that some things are better left broken, that bond was based on destiny and biology. If we build something now, it should be based on choice, on actually knowing each other, not just being magically compatible. So there's hope? Aria looked at him, really looked. Saw the man who'd rejected her and the man who'd fought beside her, and the man who was trying to be better than he was. Saw all of it at once. There's always hope, she said, but it's going to take time, and you'll have to earn it the hard way. I can do hard. We'll see. She went inside and closed the door, leaning against it for a moment. Through the window, she watched Cade walk away, shoulders straight, carrying the weight of leadership with more grace than he had 3 months ago. Things weren't perfect. The pack still had wolves who feared her, still had problems to solve, still had enemies who might decide fear was worse than respect and attack anyway. But they were alive, growing, changing, and Aria Thorn, rejected mate, half-blood monster, alpha of shadows, was the one driving that change. The next few months passed in a blur of training and building. Aria worked with the pack warriors daily, teaching them techniques she'd learned from fighting shadow wolves. She visited the deep forest weekly, keeping the shadow pack in check, learning more about her heritage, and slowly, carefully, she let herself heal. The wounds from rejection faded. Not gone, never truly gone, but scarred over into something she could live with. She started attending pack gatherings without feeling like an outsider, started laughing at jokes in the dining hall, started letting people see her as more than just a weapon. 6 months after the festival, a young wolf approached her during training. She was maybe 19, thin and nervous, with eyes that had seen too much rejection. "Enforcer Thorn?" the girl said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." How did you survive being rejected? How did you keep going when everyone said you were worthless?" Aria studied her, saw herself 6 months ago in those frightened eyes. "What's your name?" she asked. "Kira." "Well, Kira, the honest answer is that I didn't keep going. I broke. Completely. Everything I thought I was, everything I believed about myself, it all shattered." Aria sat on a training dummy, gestured for Kira to join her. But here's the thing nobody tells you about breaking. Sometimes you need to shatter before you can rebuild yourself into something stronger. But how do you rebuild? How do you start? You start by surviving one more day, then another, then another. And somewhere in all those days, you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're living. You're building something new. Aria smiled. And you realize the people who rejected you were measuring you against the wrong standard. They were looking for one kind of strength and missed that you had a different kind. Kira's eyes were wet. "I'm not strong like you." "You don't know that. I didn't know what I was capable of until I had no choice but to find out." Aria put a hand on her shoulder. "But I'll tell you what I wish someone had told me. Being rejected doesn't mean you're worthless. It means someone failed to see your value. That's their failure, not yours." What if everyone fails to see it? Then you find new people, build new connections, create a place where your kind of strength matters. Aria stood. Or you become so undeniably powerful that they have no choice but to see. That works too. Kira laughed shakily. "I don't think I can do that." "Neither did I." Aria extended her hand. "Come on, let's see what you can actually do instead of what you think you can't do." She spent the afternoon training Kira, discovered the girl was fast, not strong, but quick and precise. The kind of fighter who could slip through defenses and strike vital points before anyone realized she'd moved. "See?" Aria said as Kira successfully disarmed a warrior twice her size. "Different kind of strength, just as valuable." Word spread. Other wolves who'd felt dismissed or undervalued started seeking Aria out. She became not just the pack's enforcer, but also its refuge for the different, the strange, the ones who didn't fit traditional molds. Cade noticed. "You're building your own pack within the pack," he observed one evening. Not a pack, a family. Aria watched Kira sparring with Garrett, both of them laughing. For people who need to know they matter, even if they're not what everyone expects. Like you needed to know. Like I still need to know sometimes. Cade was quiet for a moment. Then, for what it's worth, I see your value now. All of it. Not just what you can do in a fight, but who you are. What you've built. The lives you've changed. It's worth something, Aria admitted. Not everything, but something. It was the closest they'd come to addressing the broken bond in months. Aria felt that pull again, her wolf reaching across the void. This time she didn't shut it down completely, just acknowledged it. Let it exist without acting on it. Maybe someday, but not today. The real test came 8 months after the festival. A pack from the Southern Territories, one that hadn't attended the gathering, sent raiders across Ironwood's borders. 20 wolves, armed and coordinated, attacking a small settlement on the territory's edge. The alarm reached Aria in the training yard. She grabbed her weapons and ran, that shadow power already rising in her blood. She reached the settlement in 15 minutes. Found the raiders in the middle of destroying buildings, terrorizing civilians. They saw her coming and laughed. "That's the famous Aria Thorn?" one of them called out. "Looks like just a girl to me." Aria didn't bother responding. She just let the shadow flesh cover her arms and went to work. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, 15 raiders were unconscious and tied up. 3 had run, 2 were dead, casualties Aria hadn't intended but didn't regret. They'd been trying to kill a child when she'd intervened. The settlement survivors stared at her with awe and fear in equal measure. "It's okay," Aria said, pulling back the shadow flesh. "They won't hurt you again." "What are you?" a woman whispered. Aria smiled tiredly. "I'm your enforcer, your protector, the thing that keeps monsters away from your door." She looked at the captured raiders. "And I'm the person who's going to make sure everyone knows what happens when you attack Ironwood." She had the raiders stripped of their weapons and sent back to their alpha with a message carved into their leader's chest. "Touch Ironwood again, and I come for you personally." It was brutal, harsh. Exactly the kind of thing old Aria, rejected, gentle Aria, would never have done. But new Aria understood that sometimes mercy looked like cruelty. Sometimes protecting the innocent meant terrifying the guilty. The message worked. The Southern Pack sent a formal apology and tribute within a week. Word spread. Aria Thorn wasn't just powerful. She was ruthless when protecting her pack. The kind of enforcer you didn't cross unless you wanted to be made an example of. Requests started coming in. Other packs, hearing about Ironwood's unusual enforcer, asked if she could train their warriors, teach them her techniques. Some even offered money for her protection. Aria turned them all down. "I protect Ironwood," she said every time. "That's my job. My choice. I'm not for hire." But Cade saw opportunity. "What if we offered training? Not you personally, but warriors you've trained. We could build alliances, strengthen connections with other packs, and establish Ironwood as a center of innovation." Aria considered it. It was smart politically, and it meant spreading the philosophy that had saved her life. That different kinds of strength were all valuable. "Okay," she agreed, "but we do it right. We don't just teach fighting techniques. We teach them to see potential in wolves they'd normally dismiss, to value diversity of skills, to build packs that are stronger because they're different, not despite it." Deal. They started small. 2 other packs sent warriors for a month of training. Aria supervised, while Garrett and Kira, both of whom had flourished under her teaching, did most of the actual instruction. It worked. The visiting warriors went home changed, carrying new techniques and new philosophies. Their packs noticed the improvement. More requests came. Within a year, Ironwood's training program was famous throughout the Northern Territories. Wolves traveled from hundreds of miles away to learn from the pack that had turned rejection into revolution. Aria found herself becoming something she'd never expected. Not just a warrior, but a teacher. A symbol. Living proof that the wolves everyone dismissed could become the ones everyone needed. 2 years after her rejection, Aria stood on the compound's wall and looked out at the forest beyond. The shadow wolves were out there, loyal and waiting. The pack below was thriving, stronger than it had been in generations. And she was home. Not because someone had given her a place, but because she'd carved out a space for herself. had proven she belonged not through submission, but through undeniable value. Footsteps on the wall made her turn. Cade climbed up to join her, moving with the ease of someone who'd made this climb 1,000 times. "Thought I'd find you here," he said. "It's a good spot for thinking." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set. 2 years had softened the sharp edges between them. The broken bond was still broken, but they'd built something else: partnership, friendship, mutual respect earned through trial and blood. "I've been thinking," Cade said, "about the future, about what Ironwood could become. And? And I think it's time to formalize what we've built, make you co-alpha officially, share leadership equally." Aria looked at him. "You serious?" "Completely. You've been leading alongside me for 2 years. The pack already sees you as an alpha. It's time to make it official." "What about Lydia, the traditionalists, the ones who still think I'm too different?" "Lydia's actually the one who suggested it." Cade smiled at Aria's shocked expression. "She said, and I quote, 'We can either keep pretending Aria isn't already an alpha, or we can acknowledge reality and move forward.' She's pragmatic, if nothing else." Aria laughed. "Never thought I'd agree with Lydia about anything." "So what do you say?" "Co-alphas. Equal leadership. We rebuild pack structure from the ground up, make it something that works for wolves like you and Kira and everyone else who doesn't fit the old molds." Aria thought about it, about the girl she'd been, desperate for acceptance, willing to be whatever others wanted her to be, about the woman she'd become, strong, independent, someone who made her own rules. "On one condition," she said. "We don't call it co-alphas, we call it dual leadership. And we make it clear that this is a new model, not Alpha and Luna, not primary and secondary, just 2 leaders with different strengths working together." "I can live with that." They shook on it, there on the wall as the sun painted the sky in shades of fire and gold. The formal ceremony happened during the next full moon. Representatives from a dozen packs attended, some supportive, some curious, some skeptical but willing to watch. Aria stood in the gathering hall where she'd been rejected 2 years earlier. Same place, same stones, same pack. But everything was different. She wore the enforcer leathers she'd earned. Cade stood beside her as an equal, not as someone granting her status. And when the pack elder stepped forward with the leadership marks, silver bands that would be placed on their wrists, every wolf in the hall stood to witness. "Aria Thorn," the elder said, "do you accept the responsibility of leadership, of protecting this pack and guiding its future?" "I do," Aria said clearly, "but I accept it on my terms, as someone who will value every wolf regardless of their strength or status, as someone who will protect the weak, challenge the strong, and make sure no one else feels the way I felt when I was rejected." The elder smiled. She was the same one who'd overseen Aria's rejection. "That's exactly what this pack needs." She placed the silver band on Aria's wrist. It caught the firelight, throwing sparks across the hall. Then Cade stepped forward. "I also accept responsibility for past failures, for not seeing Aria's worth, for almost destroying this pack through my own blindness." He looked at the assembled wolves. "But more importantly, I accept the responsibility of learning from those failures, of building something better." The elder placed his band, and it was done. Dual leaders of Ironwood Pack, equal in power, different in nature, stronger together than either could be alone. The hall erupted in cheers. Aria stood there, feeling the weight of the silver band, the weight of responsibility, the weight of everything she'd fought for finally settling onto her shoulders where it belonged. Later, after the ceremony, after the celebrations, after the visiting packs had expressed their congratulations or concerns, Aria found herself alone in her cabin. She sat on her cot and looked at the silver band on her wrist, thought about the journey that had brought her here, from rejected mate to dual leader, from worthless to invaluable, from broken to rebuilt, stronger. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Kira entered, followed by 3 other young wolves Aria had trained. They looked nervous. "We wanted to thank you," Kira said, "for everything you've done, for showing us that being different isn't weakness." "You showed yourselves," Aria corrected. "I just gave you permission to see it. Still, you changed our lives." Kira hesitated. "And we wanted you to know that whatever happens, wherever you go, we'll follow. You're our alpha, not because of ceremony or tradition, but because you earned it." Aria felt emotion tightening her throat. Thank you. That means more than you know. After they left, Aria lay back on her cot and let herself feel everything: the exhaustion, the satisfaction, the pride, the lingering pain from old wounds, and the hope for new beginnings. She'd done it, survived, thrived, proven herself beyond any doubt. But more than that, she'd changed the definition of what strength meant. Had created a space where wolves like her, different, unusual, unexpected, could flourish instead of being cast aside. Sleep came easy that night. No nightmares, no fear, just the deep rest of someone who'd fought for their place and won. The rejected mate had become a leader. The weakness had become strength. The girl who'd been thrown away had rebuilt herself into someone irreplaceable. And tomorrow, Aria Thorn, co-alpha of Ironwood, alpha of shadows, teacher and warrior and symbol of everything the old world had tried to destroy, would wake up and continue building the future she'd fought so hard to create. A future where no one would ever again be rejected for being different, where strength came in many forms, where even the broken could become whole again. The forest whispered through her window, shadow wolves stirring in the deep darkness, and Aria Thorn smiled in her sleep. She'd found her pack, found her power, found herself, and she was never letting any of it go.